country?
Because Egypt is the oldest and the most highly developed technical civilization in the history of humanity.
From which flowed?
From which flowed the civilizations throughout the rest of the world. We're talking mathematics, astronomy, we're talking chemistry. Chemistry, for example, is named after Kemet. It comes from chem, or chemistry. We're talking religion, we're talking philosophy, we're talking all genre of literature, such as the epic play, the poem, everything, the arts and the sciences, grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, music, what have you. This is Pharaoh Senwosret the First. The Greeks changed his name to Sesostris. The reason I say he's important in this Middle Kingdom is that this is the man who, according to European legend, was the founder of Athens. And then here's Amenemhet the Third.
And this is your Egyptian king.
This is an Egyptian king, Pharaoh, Amenemhet the Third again.
Can you go back to that other one?
Yes, we'll go back to the other one.
Now this is an Egyptian king.
Yes.
These statues, these images, and maybe we should say that these are not drawings recently done or
no, these are carvings
recently.
that were done. This would have been done around 2,000 years before Christ.
Okay, now, these carvings were around all along.
Oh, they've been here.
All right. Why was it that you had European images when the Egyptian story was put on the screen?
Well, again, you have to remember what's happened. If you look at Egyptology and if you look at Hollywood, Europeans have claimed African history for themselves. And so you'll get Yul Brynner, Carlton Heston portraying Egyptians. You'll get Vivian Leigh and other European actors and actresses. And so after a while, the public begins to believe that this is what they really look like. We had these images that we could look at, and we could get people who looked like them, but they did not.
Hello, I'm Lister Velt Middleton. We are very glad to have you with us. At the beginning of this century, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois predicted that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. And color, the glorification of one and denigration of another or others, continues to play a dominant role in determining how power is distributed. But what are the tools that have been used and are being used to maintain black-white power relationships? And how are words and images being used to control thought and action among people of African descent in the United States and around the globe? When and how does an African become a Negro? How was the myth of white superiority created in the modern world, and how was it projected back in time? So-called Western education for black children, poison or medicine, the origins of humanity, the beginnings of civilization, royal African images in ancient Egypt, and Africa's gift to Europe. Just some of the topics we'll explore with Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III, the Fuller E. Calloway Professor of Urban Education at Georgia State University. Dr. Hilliard is the former Dean of the School of Education at San Francisco State University. A highly respected educational psychologist, Dr. Hilliard was involved with the court case that outlawed IQ testing for black children in California. Dr. Hilliard recovered with Julian Richardson George G.M. James' seminal work, Stolen Legacy, The African Origin of Greek Philosophy. Dr. Hilliard, what does it mean to be black in America from a psycho-historical perspective?
It's important for blacks in America to know history. That history includes the history of enslavement in Africa, of colonization, later of segregation in the United States. My own studies as a psychologist of the uses of history have shown that this enslavement had more than one part to it. There was the physical enslavement, but the only way that physical enslavement would work is that the mind also had to be enslaved. And there were a series of processes that I call the dynamics of domination. These processes go something like this, that in order for one group of people, in this case Europeans, to control an African population, it was necessary first to erase African memory. Secondly, to suppress the practice of African culture. Third, to teach white supremacy. Fourth, to control the institution of socialization, to prevent African people from educating their own children, from sending their own messages and so forth through media and what have you. The control of wealth, and finally, physical segregation. These are the historical activities that Europeans engaged in order to conquer the continent, to enslave people, to practice segregation. And of course, if you look closely at that list, you'll notice that the first few things on the list are really psychological. For example, to destroy memory or to suppress or erase memory is a psychological operation which disables anyone as an individual who had no memory.
Now, when you say memory, you're talking about personal memory or what?
I mean the memory of one's group history in particular. Personal memory would be important if we're talking about your own psychological individual adaptation. But you can use the same thinking to apply to a group. When a group loses its historical memory, it is disabled as a result. So these were some of the very calculated and conscious tactics that were applied that resulted in the disabling of the African population. So history, identity, the teaching a belief in white supremacy, each of these is a psychological process that was practiced, and we need to understand that in part by going back and examining the historical record. And having understood it, it's possible to gain control over those things that control us.
What do you mean by de-Africanization, and how did that process work?
Well, of course, that leads right out of what we were just talking about, that the erasing of memory, the teaching of white supremacy, and so forth, can place an African population in a position where it begins to reject its own image of itself, its own memory of itself, its own history, becomes less African in conscious behavior, although it's very hard to become, if you're truly of African origin, it's very hard for that behavior to disappear, but it's easier for the consciousness of that behavior to disappear. And so over a period of time, figure the centuries that African populations have been in America, it's possible that the population gradually comes to think of itself not as African, but in other terms. Some will think of themselves as Negroes, as coloreds, as disadvantaged, as poor, even as merely American. Each of these is a step or an indication that there is some loss of conscious contact with one's true identity.
You have talked about the neuroses, I guess that's the word maybe, among the European population during this enslaving period. Would you address that, please?
Right. Well, if you operate a system of domination, a formal system of domination, by those rules that I talk about, you have to confront the truth. And the only way that you can be consistent in applying those rules is ultimately to bend the truth. And after a while, it results in an adaptive process that we call racism, which is really a mental, it's a disorder in the mental sense because it follows the rules of mental disorder. For example, manifestations of racist behavior as a result of domination are the denial of reality, perceptual distortion, delusions of grandeur, phobias in the face of differences, and projecting blame, blaming the victim.
Now explain those, please.
Well, each of these are ways that I guess you call them adjustment or adaptive mechanisms. For example, if you take Africa as it really existed, and you attempt to subjugate Africa, as Europeans did, it couldn't work if you're subjugating another human being. So that human being had to be changed mentally into something else. It had to be changed into a subhuman or an animal or anything else. But you could not operate and be consistent with yourself. So it required a change in one's mind, which meant that Europeans had to begin to lie to themselves about what Africa was and had been, and in the process of keeping that misinformation going, then one adapts to unreality. So when you see reality, it's necessary to deny reality. So denial of reality would be an example of that, would be to look at the population of Egypt, which was a black population, and to say it was a white population. That's a flat-out denial of what the facts say, and that, of course, has been typical throughout history. Perceptual distortion is just simply not getting a clear view of what is really true, even while looking at the truth. Teaching of white supremacy means the belief in the supremacy of white people, or it could be anyone who would follow the rules of oppression. If one decided that their own group was superior to all other groups, that would be an example of what I call a Napoleonic complex, because it is not true that the white group is superior to anyone else, but the belief in that would be a psychological distortion of reality, and in that sense would be following the rules for oppression.
Okay, as we get ready to go to the first slide, you've said that racism is a mental disorder.
Yes.
I was interviewing a gentleman the other day, and I brought that up in a conversation, and he said, well, racism is not a mental disorder. He said racism is very ordered. He said that whites, Europeans, know exactly what they're doing, that racism is a political and economic convenience. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think it depends on who you're talking about. If you talk about see, I think of systems as having designers, as having advocates, as having players, and as having pawns. This is from game theory, and I borrowed that from Bob Williams, who analyzes systems in that way. Everybody is not a game maker or a game designer. So the game designer might be conscious of creating a racist system, whereas the advocate probably becomes unconscious. They buy into the system that was created by the designer. And so the advocate is a racist in the sense that I'm talking about it, or the dealer, you know, those people who carry out the rules of the master in the system without really knowing why the master created the system, or even that a system was created. They just simply inherit a belief system and an action system. And in that sense, they are players in the game, but they are not the game makers. So okay. I make a distinction between
now break that down for the person on the street one time.
Right.
Go over that again.
So there are some people who are puppets.
All right.
And there are others who are puppeteers.
Okay. Thank you. Free your mind.
I'll try to do a better job.
Okay. Free your mind. Return to the source. African origins. Why that title?
Okay. Well, obviously we've been talking about the fact that the adjustment to domination is kind of a mental adjustment as well as a physical adjustment. So for the person who is enslaved and for the person who enslaves, I've already suggested that there is a distortion between the real world and what they believe. There's a mismatch between those two things. So what we need to do in order to get back at the truth is to have mental freedom. So I like to title this program about mental freedom. So it's free your mind. Return to the source suggests the way to get to mental freedom. That means going back to primary sources. Instead of talking about what someone heard, let's go to the evidence itself. Also, in the case of African people, it means returning to African sources, because that's the only way that renewal can occur. And then, of course, African origins refers to the fact that Africa is the home of many things, and most of us don't know that. And things have been said about Africa that make us believe the opposite of that. We don't believe that Africa was a creative place, that it was a teacher. We believe that Africa was always a recipient, a student of other people. And so African origins, which is the source, one of the sources, by considering those African origins, it's a way to free the mind of oppressor and oppressed. I have a short section that I call the defamation of African people, and the reason that I do this is that it's important to establish the fact that some of the things I said are true, and we won't have time to go into many of these, but I'll just show you an example of the perceptual distortion, the denial of reality, the attempt to erase history, the attempt to oppress culture. All right. In 1910, the Encyclopedia Britannica had an article in it about Negro. This would be one of many examples of how African and other people get information about themselves. And here's an example. I actually took a photograph of that article. And if you'll notice in the second underlined paragraph on that article, it says, mentally, the Negro is inferior to the white. Then it goes on in that article to talk about the fact that as children, our children were okay, they were bright, smart, well-developed, but that as black children and white children grow older, black children become dumb and white children become smart. And therefore you have to think of black and white people as being different people. This is in the
Encyclopedia Britannica.
This is in the most respected encyclopedia, Encyclopedia Britannica. So the most authoritative thought then would have sanctioned this view in 1910, and that was not unlike what was being said in theological schools, which were teaching that Africans did not have souls, that would be taught in certain biology classes, which were teaching that Africans were not even a part of the same branch of the human family, that would have been taught in history classes, which taught that Africans had no history, and so forth and so on. In other words, that whole body of thought that emerged during the periods of the past couple hundred years to create the orientation among Europeans that would allow them to oppress African people without feeling bad about it.
So what does this say about the role white scholarship played and continues to play in the oppression of black people?
In general, European scholarship has been leading in the creation of the belief system. In fact, I think it would be safe to say that without the scholars, there would have been no racism, because they helped create the belief system with authenticity. If a professor of biology says that Africans are inferior, if a professor of theology says it, it's different than having a man on the street say it. So we can actually, in tracing the history of racism, in other words, we don't have to speculate about this, there are many good books on the history of racism led by scholars in academic institutions. A good example would be the book by Alan Chase called The Legacy of Malthus. And there are many others. The Leopard Spots by Stanton. There are many books that study the seminal role that scholars have played in creating these images of Africans.
Once again, why did the slave master attempt to de-Africanize the African?
Well, it's very important. Anyone who studies the function of culture, what culture does for a group of people, knows that culture glues a group of people together so that you have group unity. So that in the for the slave master to be successful, he had to destroy group unity. And the best way that he could destroy group unity was to destroy that which held the group together, which was the group's own identity, way of life, historical memory, or, in short, to destroy the group's culture.
Why should a people 400 years physically removed from Africa be concerned about their Africanness?
For the same reason that I was trying to explain in terms of why the slave master chose to attack the culture of the slave. If the slave is to be liberated, the slave must affirm that culture, must go back, recapture, incorporate, use their own native cultural forms as the base for creating a brand new life.
Well, you know what Malcolm X, he quoted somebody one time saying, you know, I didn't leave anything in Africa. You know, I'm not an African.
That's true.
You know.
Yeah, he said, you say I haven't left anything in Africa. He says, why, you left your mind in Africa, which is true.
Okay. Let's go.
Okay, let's take a look then at the next example. Would be a page out of a catalog called Johnson Catalog, where white actors, minstrels could get something that was called nigger makeup, and this was circulated all over the country, and for years, actually for almost 50 years, one of the most popular forms of entertainment in America was this minstrel. So here is a white actor, in this case Al Jolson, and we need to see the whole slide.
Okay.
Al Jolson, who is became very famous doing imitations of imitation black people, because these were not real black people. But you'll notice that he has burnt cork on his face, and he's done something to his hair, and then he becomes comic, and that gives him the opportunity to project an image of African people to other people. And so this is another example of the defamation of African people. Here's a contemporary example. This is Darky toothpaste that's sold by Colgate Palmolive Company. It's sold in the Far East, and again, the exaggeration of black facial features, the business of ridicule and so forth, making fun of black people. You see that happening right now, and in fact, there's an article in the Atlanta Constitution showing the reaction of some groups to the fact that Colgate Palmolive Company sold this stuff in the Far East. When they were asked about it, according to this news article, they said...
What year?
This would have been, I think it's 1986, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They said, when asked about this, well, there's no black people over here anyway to see this, and it's not offensive to others, so we're going to go ahead and sell it. So the last word I had is still being sold.
James Baldwin has said that many times what you say about someone else says more about you than about that person. With this in mind, what was the commentary that whites were making about themselves when they blackened their faces?
Well, you know, there's a real interesting book called Blacking Up. And it really examines the psychology of white people who blacked up. Blacking up means putting on the burnt cork and doing minstrels. At one level, you could say it's creating entertainment and making fun of black people. But what this book talks about from first-hand interviews with people who used to do that was they actually had an identification with the black culture, sometimes with black people. And one person said they just didn't feel right until they got blacked up. They'd lay down at night and dream about blacking up. They'd have this in their dreams for days and days on end, and until they could actually get blacked up and begin to do the things that they thought black people did.
Oh, no. Are there strong Freudian implications for this, or what?
If I were a Freudian psychologist, I'd give you a Freudian explanation for it. But clearly it's something that needs to be studied as a behavioral phenomenon. You know, the idea of the psychological meaning that this has for whites, other than just simply making fun of black people. Some people treat it as just being mean, but there's much more to it than that. Okay, let's, here's another example. There are a few more. I'll just run through these because our interest is in some other things, but this is an example of postcards that used to be sent through the United States Mail. I have hundreds of these. This says, "A coon trees a possum in Dixie." So it's making fun of the black male. Sapolio. This is the use of the watermelon as a stereotype with black face in it, and this was an advertisement for soap.
And this is happening around what period?
Well, it happened up, and it's still happening, quite frankly, but you'd see most of these in the 20s, 30s, 40s, in the 50s, and even into the 60s. You'd see a lot of advertisements like these. even now you still see sold in stores the little man who holds the lantern outside for your lawn, you know, a black figure who holds the lantern as a servant. This was a textbook that was used in the late 1800s. 10 Little Niggers, actually used in schools as a textbook.
In this country?
In this country, yes. It would be interesting to go through the pages of this textbook and see the stories, because they're even more objectionable than the title suggests, but we just don't have time to get into it. But again, if African American children have to rely on these images for understanding about who they are and where they have come from, then you can see that we are putting into the African American mind information that will distort reality.
So all of these images were designed to do what?
To defame black people, to, as you say, de-Africanize black people, to turn the African into something other than an African.
Okay.
For the purposes that we talked about a little earlier, to destroy the cultural base in order to destroy the political unity of the group.
Okay.
Okay, the question was asked in a magazine article some time ago, the television, because now we want, you know, you were asking earlier, how long ago was this? And I indicated that these things continue to happen even in 1987. Does television have a secret formula for blacks? And we see the Jeffersons as one of the most popular programs on TV. And this is the picture that talks about what that formula is. It appears that on American television, virtually all of the programming that is done about black people is programming that is written by white people. You know, there are very few exceptions to this. And these are some of the authors of those programs, like the Jeffersons, like Fred Sanford and Son, and so forth. So what we have in black images on television is white people's images of what black people are or perhaps ought to be.
Which is a continuation of the minstrels.
Which is a continuation of the minstrel. And so we'll see it. Let's see what kind of images they like. They like images like this, Fred Sanford, like this, JJ. You remember how prominent JJ was?
I think he's back on television again.
Is he back on?
He's back on. He has a family now, I think.
Yeah, okay. But he's doing the same things in all probability. Let's look at what happens as a consequence of that over time. Then African American children, looking at the negative images of African people that are shown, cannot develop positive images of themselves. So then they seek images that are positive by looking at other people besides themselves.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. That was just a brief introduction. We could have done hours just on that part alone. And there's really a need to go into that kind of thing much more in detail.
But this is the part that you want to get to.
This is the part that I want to get to.
Okay. Okay.
But my wife told me that I had to put that other part in, or people wouldn't know why it was necessary for me to go into this part. Okay. The next section is a section that we call Africa as the Cradle of Humanity. And there's a need to talk about this because until recently, there's been very little acknowledgement of the fact that the human family was a single human family. You know, a few years ago, 100 years or so ago, there were many theories about the fact that that human beings actually started separately in different places on the earth, that black people started in Africa, white people started in Europe, yellow people started in Asia.
Polycentric.
Polycentric, polygenetic theory, many origins for human beings. Well, I think that's been pretty thoroughly discredited now, and as they began to search for what was called a monogenetic origin, or a single origin for all people, that there's really only one human family, and that's what I think almost everybody believes right now. That as they began to search for this one source of the human family, the chauvinism of the people who were doing the searching at the time, those who were searching were European. So they wanted this human family to originate in Europe, or they wanted its fullest development to be European. So they began to search in Europe for ancient fossil finds, ancient bones. Never really were able to go back very far. In fact, as far as they were ever able to go back was about 500,000 years. Then the search for this human ancestor shifted to Asia, and it was very intensive. The search could only go back to about 1 million years. And then this search shifted to Africa. They were looking in all these places at the same time, but they really wanted to find the oldest bones in Europe, and if not Europe, then Asia, and finally in Africa. And of course, Africa is now recognized by virtually everyone as the home of the human family. And it starts back about 5 million years ago. And Africa is not only the home of all the human types. There are 6 different human types that have been on the earth, and Africa is the home of all 6 of those types, and the earliest form of each of those types is found on the continent of Africa.
But once again, why were European scholars so bent on making Europe the place of origin of humanity?
They would be what you call Eurocentric. In other words, they wanted to elevate Europe, to claim all good things for Europe, and at that time the origin of man being in Europe could have been considered support for the theory of white supremacy or European supremacy.
Now, what time are we talking? Time period are we talking about?
We're talking about the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, during that period, but especially during the last 200 years. Okay, the National Geographic magazine is, I guess in 1985, November of 1985, that's when this particular issue was presented, contains the summary of the information that I was just giving you, and I will go through it very quickly. Today, Africa is recognized as the cradle of the human race. That's one line out of that article on early man in National Geographic. Skin color was probably dark, an evolutionary adaptation to the tropical sun.
Why is that?
Why was skin color dark? Well, biologists have a rule, an explanation that says that warm-blooded animals, like human beings, when they live in tropical climates, in humid tropical climates, develop pigmentation. They have a chemical called eumelanin, which is responsible, among other things, for skin color. And that dark skin color in the tropics protects you from the ultraviolet rays of the sun. So anyone who was not protected in that way generally wouldn't survive. For example, albinos can survive to a normal life in northern Europe. A normal life, there's really very little threat to their lives. But in the tropics, very few live beyond the age of 30. So because of the ultraviolet rays of the sun being damaging to people with that pigmentation. And until we had air conditioning and other forms of adjustment, it wasn't easy for populations not native to Africa to survive in Africa. But so that if you were guessing what the early African looked like, as people who study that do now, the archaeologists, paleontologists, biologists who are interested in ancient human beings, their best guess is that these ancient human beings had to be black people, just as the people of Africa today are.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, here is one of the human types. Remember I said there were 6 human types. There were 2 different types of Australopithecines, Australopithecus gracile, Australopithecus robustus, Homo habilis. And these 3 types that I've shown so far are found only on the continent of Africa. Nowhere else do they exist. Then we have the first one to leave the continent of Africa was Homo erectus, the one that I'm showing you now. Homo erectus left the continent of Africa approximately 1 million years ago. And we call this one Pithecanthropus erectus, if you've heard heard him talked about in school. Then there is Neanderthal. This one apparently left the continent of Africa somewhere around 500,000 years ago. But the oldest bones for Neanderthal are found on the African continent. This one is called Homo sapiens sapiens. This is the only one that's left out of the 6, and that's modern man. And so
who originated in...
Who also originated in Africa. Now, there's some new information on modern man. For years, the best estimate as to how old modern man was in Africa was that modern man was approximately 100,000 years old in Africa. It turns out now that there are some people who are doing studies of mitochondrial DNA, which is genetic information in the human cell. And it turns out that there's two different types of DNA information generators. One is in the middle of the cell, or the nucleus of the cell. The other is in the tissue of the cell. That DNA that's in the tissue of the cell is carried only by the female. That allows scientists to study the evolution of different groups. And without going into all the technical details, which I don't understand, and it isn't necessary at this point, it is important to point out that in 3 different parts of the world, in London, I think it was at Oxford, at Emory University in Georgia, Atlanta, at Berkeley, California, at these 3 universities, independently, these scientists have studied through computer modeling, backwards in time, the origin of the human family. And they come up with a woman they call African Eve. And instead of 100,000 years old, this woman is 250,000 years old. That's the estimate. And it turns out that in their theory, one African woman is responsible, or at least is the direct ancestor of every human being on the face of the earth. Everybody who now lives traces their ancestry back to this one African woman. And the speculation about how she looked is that she would look like a person that we call the Australian bush people. I mean, the South African bushman in the Kalahari region, not the Australian, but in southern Africa, in the Kalahari region, you have the so-called bush people, and that these people have the genetic material that is diversified enough to have been the unit that became the parent group for everybody else in the world.
So once again, this woman would have been how old now?
250,000 years old.
At
now,
least.
just by way of comparison, the oldest Homo sapiens sapiens bones that we find in Europe are about 40,000 to 50,000 years old. This is the Grimaldi skeletons that were found in the Grimaldi cave.
So you have the African, how long ago now?
You have the African at least 200,000 years before they moved to the European continent.
And the European comes on the scene when?
Well, the African comes on the scene in Europe approximately 50,000 years ago. In other words, the first European was an African too, and is still an African. It's just an African who has changed.
And once again, what happened to that African once he got to Europe?
Well, you had several ice ages.
That African once he got to Europe.
Well, you had several ice ages and a change in environment, and the theory is that the change in environment, and especially the ice age part of it, being cut off from the African continent, having a completely different environment with respect to diet and climate and all those things, resulted over a 20,000 year period in physical changes, genetic mutations to adapt to that particular environment. And about 20,000 years or so ago, we have changes sufficient that we look and see distinct people when they really aren't distinct in that sense, in the sense of having groups that can't interbreed. That's what one of the biological definitions of race is, that groups can't, a dog and a cow can't have offspring, so they would be different strains, but varieties of the same family, so that the European that resulted was merely a depigmented African.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay. Okay, if you notice, all these fossils that I was talking about, and this is just a sample of some of them, are located in Africa, mainly in the same place. They all are located with their center around Lake Victoria or Lake Nyanza. And so you'll see that they're in Ethiopia, they're in Tanzania, they're in Uganda, down in Mozambique, and so forth. These are the places, but mostly in Kenya and Tanzania. These are the richest fossil finds. but I'm trying to show that they're tightly packed together in one place, and that's all of the types are generally, you would say that they had their home in the equatorial region of Africa. And then later, they moved northward down the Nile Valley. Remember, the Nile is about 4,000 miles long. And so that was literally a highway down which these populations over various times migrated. At least 3 of them migrated far enough to leave the African continent.
Okay.
Okay, so far what we've talked about is the defamation of African people and examples of that. Then we've talked about the origin of the human family, which brings us to really what is the most important part, because early man, let's say early man and modern man being found in Africa by itself has very little meaning for most of the things that we're concerned about, which has to do with what some people call civilized behavior. So what we want to know, though, is when did human beings begin to develop high civilization, and who were these human beings that did that? It turns out that Africans were, according to the records that we have now, the ones who first developed the elements of high civilization. And that's what we'd like to look at right now, which is the story of high civilization in the world, which is also the beginning of civilization on the African continent.
Okay.
Okay, let me come, before we go to that particular slide.
We'll go to the card here.
Yeah, let me go. I'd like to explain what we'll be talking about over the next few minutes. This is a time chart of that period of the development of recorded civilization. What this means is that something was happening before 4000 BC. We're going to pick up the story right around in here. But even before 4000 BC, according to ancient African oral records, things were going on as far as 25,000 BC. They say that the age of one of their nations goes back that far. But we're just going to confine ourselves to the records that exist and not merely to oral testimony. And so to do that, we're going to look at a timeline that starts back here, let's say around 4000 BC, comes all the way up to the present. And let's see what was happening in the world and put some things that we know next to some things that we may not know about. This side is Africa, and this side is Asia and Europe. Okay? In Africa, the oldest nation that we find, and also in the world, because there are no nations over here that are this old, the oldest nation in the world is in Ta Seti, or was named Ta Seti, land of the bow. And it's located in Nubia, under the waters of the Aswan Dam. Now, this Ta Seti is covered when they built the Aswan Dam. United Nations Educational and Cultural Organization, with the cooperation of the United States and several other nations, rescued the artifacts by digging in the graves and everything, and pulled up bodies and pottery and what have you, enabling us to discover that long before Egypt, or Kemet, long before Kemet, which starts as a nation here, long before Kemet, you had another nation, Nubia, which is the parent of Kemet. So that 3500 BC to about 3100 BC, you had Kemet in operation. And the physical description of the kings of Ta Seti, the physical description of them, is that they are tall and that they have Negroid appearance. Their bodies were found. And they were located in Nubia, which has always been the home of black African population.
And the Nubians still exist?
Nubians still exist.
Would you describe them for us? You were in Egypt recently.
Probably the darkest people in Africa are Nubians, anywhere on the continent. Even when you go down into southern Africa, they become more brown-skinned. But when you get to that part of Kenya, in parts of Ethiopia, but especially in Nubia, you have a very, very dark population.
And they created what now?
This is Ta Seti. Everything, all the evidence shows that that was the population of Ta Seti.
Which is older than Egypt.
Older than Egypt.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, now we have Egypt, 3100 BC, and we have 12 dynasties. These are 12 families. We have it grouped this way for a very special reason. That was the first nation that most people knew about in the world, And for the first 1,000 years of Kemetic existence,
or Egyptian
existence. So Kemet is Egypt, except that the old Egyptians never called their country Egypt. They called it Kemet. So we call it Kemet to refer to the old civilization. So if you say Egypt, you're really talking about the new civilization, which is mainly Arabic, which is a foreign population, just like the European population is in America now. But they weren't here 10,000 years ago.
The people who are in Egypt now are...
They are people who came from Syria, Assyria, even Persia and places like that, and mixed with Nubian populations. So they're mainly a foreign population.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The 12 families, 1 through 12, go from 3100 BC up to about 2000 BC. What's important about that is all the pyramids were built during that period. All the major pyramids were built during that period, and no invaders had conquered an African country in the record. There's no record of invaders having conquered Africa from outside, which means that all the pyramids were built by native Africans, and most of the main pyramids were built at the first part of this family, in what we call the Old Kingdom, dynasties 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's when most of your pyramids were built. So that when you get down here to dynasty 11 and 12, which is the Middle Kingdom, see, this would be Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom. This is when you read Egyptian history.
Now, when you say pyramid, some people might not have an appreciation for that structure. You're talking about a structure that's 48 stories high?
You're talking, yes, you're talking about the Great Pyramid, and that was one of the first pyramids, by the way. The pyramids got worse as they began to build more of them. They did a poorer job.
Okay.
But the first pyramid was a step pyramid, and then there were a couple of pyramids by the founder of the 4th dynasty, Seneferu, whose picture we will show. Okay. And his son, Khufu, built the Great Pyramid. Now, that pyramid is the 48-story building.
Okay.
And
that's 2200 odd BC or so, right?
It would be right. It would be around 2200 BC.
Okay.
It's built out of 2 million limestone blocks, 2,200,000 to be more precise. And each one of those blocks weighs about 2 tons apiece. And it's still standing. It's one of the only wonders of the world that you can still go back and see today. So what's important is that the pyramid age, a high-tech age, a technological age, which showed that Africans were architects, engineers, astronomers, and so forth, occurs here, and you have nothing like it anywhere else in the world going on, only on the African continent. And then we have an invasion here.
Now, where is Europe during this time? I mean, where is
there is no Europe during
Greece?
this time. There is no Greece during this time. You will not get a Greece until approximately at this point. In fact, you don't have...
Now, when you say there is no Europe, you don't mean that land doesn't exist.
The land exists, but what I'm saying is you don't have organized nations on the human record. There are no records of nations at that time. You have people there, and you have land there, but you have no organized nations. So what we call Europe as a concept is either a continental civilization or a nation or national or a series of nations that did not exist as an idea or during this period of the Pyramid Age. It did not exist. Okay. We'll begin to say something about Europe over here. Let's look at the invasion, though. This is the first invasion from Asia. That invasion was a very destructive invasion. In other words, they brought nothing other than the horse and the chariot. Okay. That's the only innovation that historians attribute to the Asians.
This is around what time?
This would be shortly after 2000 BC, about 1700 BC or so. This group, the Hyksos, came in, and they stayed there for a while, about 150 years or so. Abraham came in about that time. Now, this is not to say that Abraham was a Hyksos. We don't know who Abraham was, but in the Bible, according to oral history, Abraham came in around 1750 BC, which would have been about the time of this invasion from Ur of the Chaldees. Moses then leaves about 1300 BC. Again, we don't know because all of this is oral history. And, but these two overlap this invading period, which disrupts the continuity of Kemet. Kemet comes back. Egypt comes back in this grand and glorious dynasty. This would be the great golden age. See, there was a golden age in the Pyramid Age, there's a golden age in the Middle Kingdom, and this is the grand golden age right here. This is the King Tut, Nefertiti, Nefertari dynasty.
After the invaders were kicked out.
After the invaders were kicked out. And we will see who kicked the invaders out. And then we had a growth program again. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that all of the high-tech periods were led by natives.
Okay.
In other words, you have nothing left of what these people did. Okay, then there's also a 19th dynasty. This is the Ramses period. I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay. We got about 10 minutes, I think.
10 minutes? Is that all?
Go ahead.
Okay, the
So now
25th
you know.
dynasty, which is the Revival Age. These are important golden ages of native black African rule. That's why I have them posted there. It's also important to notice that we have the first intrusion of Greeks into Africa here. This is the period of Alexander the Great through the Ptolemies, and then the Roman period starts just before Christ and comes up to here. So you have a 300-year period here of Greek rule, about a 300-year period of Roman rule. This is 600 years of foreign rule of Kemet. And so I'm putting this up because later when I show you a couple pictures of Greeks and Romans, we want you to see where they come into Egyptian history.
And they come in during what period
They come in just around the time of Christ. And,
Okay.
and they come in at the end of the period. In other words, they contribute literally nothing, but they take a lot out.
Okay.
So this is why we say the foundation of Greco-Roman civilization culturally is an African foundation. They took what they learned here home and began to imitate those cultural forms. Actually, the contact between Greece and Rome and Africa begins here when Africans went to Greece and Rome, especially
say
to
that
Greece.
again now. Say that again.
Africans in this kingdom here, the 12th dynasty, around 2000 BC, Africans were in what we call Greece. In fact, one of the people I will show you on the slides is supposed to be the founder of Athens, according to Greek mythology, not according to African mythology, but I mean also according to African mythology.
But this is what the Greeks said about
But the Greeks
their
said
origin.
that their founder, came from outside, especially Athens, which is very important. So I hope that this timeline will help us to place the pictures of the royal images in some kind of order as we go through those.
Okay, let me ask you to go through it one more time in our remaining minutes. Just briefly go over that again.
Okay, so you start with the first nation in human history, Tasseti. You follow Tasseti, you go a little bit north on the continent to a place we now call Egypt. It's called Kemet, for 12 families, and then an interruption from Asia. Some more families in the 18th dynasty, and then there's a period of kind of general decline. Another revival here in the 25th dynasty, sometimes called the Ethiopian dynasty. And then the Persians come in here, some more deterioration. Finally, the important period that we know most about Egypt from is the Greco-Roman period here, around the time of Christ, and that marks the end of political control of Kemet by native Africans. And it meant that outsiders will, from there on, outsiders will control Kemet. The culture stays the same through the whole 3,000-year period.
Okay. Any last comments final comments before we...
Before we break,
Cut
you
out.
might say here is also, when these people lost out, some of them moved south, and we have a 600-year period of rule by African queens at the same time that the Greeks and Romans were ruling the north part of the continent. These queens ruled from Meroe up near Khartoum in what is now Sudan. And there's a whole story to be told about them that we just will not have time to get into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll come back. Thank you. Hello, I'm Lister Velt Middleton. We are very glad to have you with us for this second part of Free Your Mind, Return to the Source, African Origins, with Dr. Asa G. Hilliard III, the Fuller E. Calloway Professor of Urban Education at Georgia State University. Dr. Hilliard, would you address the cultural unity on the African continent, please?
Okay, I'm glad you asked that because many viewers will want to know why is it that you spend so much time doing the history of Egypt or Kemet when African populations in America, they believe, came from West Africa, and they can't see a connection between West Africa and East Africa. So I need to make.
So they believe that the real Africans are the West Africans.
West African and the others.
Anybody but the.
That's right, and that's simply not true. What Professor Sheikh Anta Diop of Senegal, who died recently, was able to show through careful study and through his own personal experience, as well as many others who have studied Africa, is that while you may have physical differences as you move from one African population to another, just as in Europe, Frenchmen and Scandinavians look physically dissimilar in some respects. In Africa, you had physical differences, but you had cultural unity. In other words, the way of life of African people on one side of the continent is in many respects quite common to the way of life for African people on the other side.
So there was a thread.
So there's a thread. So I can show this by the kind of migratory pattern that you see here in this slide that comes from the penguin map of Africa, the penguin atlas of Africa. You see what looks like smoke drifting across the continent from the right side to the left side down something called the Sahel corridor. What that really is a map of population migration, showing that the people of West Africa originally migrated from the east. So it's to be expected that they would share in a kind of cultural unity. Not only did they migrate from the east, but they constantly moved back and forth between east and west, also between north and south. This map happens to be dated at about 2700 BC, showing from the Nile Valley this tremendous migration into West Africa. You can also do analysis of language in West Africa and analysis of language in East Africa, as Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop has done, to show the common core.
People moving back and forth
across the continent. So the idea of separate people on the continent itself is an idea that was introduced mainly by European scholarship, either through misunderstanding or through a deliberate attempt to
divide
and conquer mentally. That's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. Okay, let's take a look then after that at the what we can call the royal images and the divine images in ancient Africa. And the reason for showing these divine and royal images is that during the period that I talked about, the high-tech developmental periods in Egypt, all of these images are the images of African natives, black African natives. And the reason I emphasize the black and the African-ness is that many scholars have said that that wasn't true. They've said that Egypt was white and that it had nothing to do with Africa. And I'm trying to show through these physical images that that is simply not true. Okay. Here's an example of the Sphinx that we all know from the front. The name for this statue is Hor-em-Akhet, not the Sphinx. It was renamed by Greek travelers with a Greek name, which we call it today the Sphinx. But Hor-em-Akhet is a picture with a human head and a lion's body. We don't know if it's a man or a woman. Some people think it's one of the pharaohs who built one of those pyramids, Ka-af-Re. But the best evidence I have is this may be the oldest monument in the valley near the pyramids, and I think that it would be somewhere close to 10,000 years old, rather than the age that it would have to be the building of a pharaoh, or the image of a pharaoh, Ka-af-Re. Now, if we go around to the side of that monument, which is the theme picture for this series, we see the physical features in even better perspective as far as trying to identify the racial makeup of the population of the Nile Valley. And quite clearly you get what is supposed to be so-called Negroid or high cheekbones, the thick lips, and even with the nose missing, you know, from this angle, you can see that this is typical African profile. That nose and the beard that were on this statue are now in the British Museum.
Let's talk some for a minute. Why Egypt? About why Egypt is so important. What is so great about Egypt that white scientists, scholars, etc., wanted to make it a European country?
Because Egypt is the oldest and the most highly developed technical civilization in the history of humanity.
From which flowed?
From which flowed the civilizations throughout the rest of the world.
And in terms of achievements?
Whoever did whoever developed Kemet or Egypt is responsible for the initial leadership in civilizing the world. Laying the groundwork for civilization throughout the world. That's right.
And specifically, we're talking in the areas of what, mathematics?
We're talking mathematics, astronomy, we're talking chemistry. Chemistry, for example, is named after Kemet. It comes from chem, or chemistry. We're talking religion, we're talking philosophy, we're talking all genre of literature, such as the epic play, the poem, everything, the arts and the sciences, grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, music, what have you. All of these reach their perfection in Kemet, and then were transmitted throughout the rest of the world.
All right.
And so whoever is associated with that is identified then with a particular tradition, and it became Europeans did not want Africans to be identified with this tradition and preferred to identify themselves with it.
Okay.
Right. Now this is an example of the imitation. You remember I talked about the age of imitation being the Greco-Roman period. Here's an example of imitation. Here is an image of the Sphinx, and that's clearly not the same as the one we just saw, which is the oldest. That one that you just saw is at least 2,700 years before Christ, and probably 10,000 years ago. But here's one that had to have been done either during the Greco-Roman period, or in this case, it wasn't done during the Greco-Roman period. It was done as a part of the architecture of the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose, California.
Yesterday.
Right. But when they carved this image, they carved it in the image of a European rather than an African. And this is how information gets distorted.
Okay.
Remember we said divine images were always black and African. This is Osiris, the first crucified Savior, has the shepherd's crook on his arm. He was known in history as a good shepherd, has the flail in his hand. He was married to Isis, his sister, or Aset. His name was Asar. The Greeks called him Osiris. His wife's name is Aset. The Greeks called her Isis. And their son is Heru. The Greeks called him Horus. The Greeks wound up worshiping Isis, and she became the major figure in European religion up until the birth of Christianity. So that there is an African foundation for the Christian faith. Because when Christianity came in, then they had to have a virgin just like Isis, and she became Mary. In fact, the early images of Mary had her looking like Isis.
Okay.
So these would be some of the divine images of ancient Kemet. But some of the royal images of ancient...
Well, on the other one,
yes,
Isis was shown on television some years ago.
She was shown as a white woman on television here in this country, and looking more like Wonder Woman than like she actually did in her African carvings or paintings. Right.
Okay.
Okay, then we have God Ptah. This is just one of many gods. Again, they look, all of these look like African. And most of these images are either not shown or they're shown out of context. So it's a little hard for people to associate the blackness of the image with the civilization of Kemet and that civilization with the people of Africa.
What did the Africans say about who they were? I mean, these Egyptians.
The Egyptians were very clear about who they were. They said, we are Central Africans. They said, we came, our home is at the source of the Nile River, at the foothill of the Mountain of the Moon, which places them somewhere near either Kilimanjaro or Mount Rwenzori. They said that our home is the Holy Land. They call it Ta Netcher, Ta Nuter, which means Ta meaning land, and Netcher or Nuter meaning God's land. So the land around Somaliland, Punt, in later terminology, was in the minds of the ancient Kemites the Holy Land. So that was their home, and you find all during Kemetic history their orientation, their physical orientation to the south. They always look to the south just to get their bearings for their map. They also look culturally to the south. And at no point is there any evidence in Egyptian history that they claimed an Asiatic or a European origin for themselves. That's what they said, right? Okay, we have another picture of a god. This is God Geb. Again, these are divine images, and I could show many. The older they get, the more like African people they are. The newer they are, the more like the people who copied African people they are.
That is, the further back you go
in time. The further back you go in time, the more African they look, right. Okay, let's take a look at some of the actual African images, like this African king, the first king of Kemet.
Of Egypt?
Of Egypt. His name, Mina. This is Pharaoh Zoser. This is the one to build the first pyramid. Remember, I gave you this, let's put them on this chart here in perspective. These kings are in this pyramid age, which is here in the Old Kingdom.
Okay,
the kings that I'm showing you right now.
Okay, let's say that again.
These are the Old Kingdom kings, and the pyramid age is right here at the beginning of dynastic Egypt. Notice again, we have no Greeks. Abraham is not there yet, but these are the kings who are building pyramids. This is the king who built then the first pyramid. His name, Zoser.
Okay.
Here is the king who built the first true pyramid. His name, Seneferu, and he's the founder of the fourth family, or fourth dynasty of kings in Kemet.
Now, when you say true pyramid, what do you mean?
A true pyramid, well, the first pyramid was actually a group of brick benches stacked on top of each other, so they look like steps. The true pyramid is the one that has these smooth sides and it meets certain technical specifications.
Okay.
But this was the first true pyramid, and it looked like the Great Pyramid, except they weren't quite perfect yet. It was his son that actually built the Great Pyramid.
Whose son now?
Seneferu's son.
Okay.
The image, this man's son here,
okay.
Seneferu. And again, look at the facial features, and he looks just like African people. This is his son, Khufu, the only statue that we have, or carving of Khufu that we have. He built the Great Pyramid. This is the one who built the pyramid next to the Great Pyramid. His name is Khafre, or Khafre. As Greeks changed his name to Sephrin. This is the one who built the third pyramid. There's the group of three pyramids in Giza, and there are about 80 pyramids in all, but there are three in Giza that we usually see grouped together, and these are the three kings who built those three pyramids. Again, if you look at the pyramids and then you look at these three kings, these three kings, according to those carvings, are according to the image that we have of native Africans. They are native Africans. They are Africoid, Negroid, black kings of Africa. Now, I'm skipping. Let me move back to this time chart again.
Back to the chart, okay.
Because
let's hold on 1 minute. Let's let our cameras get in place here.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Go
do we
ahead.
have it here? Okay, this is the pyramid age here. And then there's a gap. There's a breakdown in here. Disunity, disorder. And then there's a new family that emerges in the 11th dynasty. First, the Mentuhotep start the 11th dynasty, and so the 11th and 12th families are called the Middle Kingdom. So I'd like to show you some Middle Kingdom pharaohs. Okay. Let's take a look at this. This is a Middle Kingdom pharaoh. Again, very dark, very Nubian. This is Mentuhotep, who is the Middle Kingdom pharaoh, and the Mentuhotep family founded the 11th dynasty, and all those kings that ruled in the 11th dynasty generally were called Mentuhotep. Then we move to the 12th dynasty, and we get to a very important pharaoh. This is Pharaoh Senwosret I. The Greeks changed his name to Sesostris. The reason I say he's important in this Middle Kingdom is that this is the man who, according to European legend, was the founder of Athens. In other words,
I'll say that again.
Yes, Athens, of course, was the great Greek city-state that most Europeans look to as the foundation of Western civilization because of all the things that took place there. And you did have a lot of great philosophers and others in Athens. But Athens itself, according to the mythological history of Greece, let's look at this chart again.
Okay.
Okay, here we have the 12th dynastic period, around 2000 BC, we get Senwos, actually a little earlier than that, we get Senwosret the first, and it's at that point that these Kemites, or Egyptians, are found over in Greece. In other words, they're traveling all up into Asia and other places, and according to Greek mythology, at this point, which is the heroic age, see, you don't really get written European history until right here.
Okay.
This is the first time. That's Homer,
Okay, and
who
that's
writes
about
the
what
Iliad
period?
and the Odyssey. This will be about 850 BC. But we're saying that before Homer, they call that the heroic age, because that's where you have to have fairy tales about history and so forth. But in their fairy tales about history, the founder of Athens is this Kemetic king that you see over here on the slide.
Egyptian, African king.
Yes, his name in Greek, they call him Kekrops. So if you read the history of Greece, you'll read that Kekrops founded Athens.
So look for Kekrops.
Kekrops. Well, Kekrops is the Grecian name for this pharaoh whose first name is Kepakare. So Kepakare becomes Kekrops. So Kepakare Senwosret I, who is one of the early pharaohs of the 12th dynasty, is the founder of Athens, according to the best research that we have right
And
now.
this would be what people call today, biblically speaking, your pharaoh.
This would be one of your pharaohs. Right. Right. Okay. Now here's Senwosret the first. Again, this is Kepakare again, the same pharaoh. There's another picture of it, but I just wanted to show you.
Where did you get that one from? I haven't seen that one.
I know you haven't seen
you...
it. I've been holding back on it. I just got this one this year.
Okay.
I got this year in the Cairo Museum. This is a beautiful statue. Just as you go inside, he's standing off to the left. There's not much information about him there, but his name is attached to the statues. Pharaoh Senwosret the first, Ka Kepere.
So there's not much information about him there. Why is that? You're talking about a pharaoh.
Well, if you go through the Cairo Museum, one of the interesting things is there's more information sometimes about scribes than about major pharaohs.
Why?
Well, we have to speculate as to why it is, but some of the scribes that have all this information and attention and prominently displayed are the ones that have more European appearance.
And you find these Europeans coming into Egypt later on.
European, you mean in terms of studying Egypt?
Right, studying and
the study of
scribe,
the study of Egypt by Europeans began with Napoleon. He could be considered the founder of Egyptology.
All right. So these European images that you find of the...
Yes, there are images in Egypt, carvings, paintings, that would be more European or Asian in appearance, because there were types that had come into Egypt at all times. You know, people were travelers, a few settlers, and so forth, and they could rise in the hierarchy. In other words, there was no bar to their going to school, becoming educated, becoming even politically powerful. They could do that. But in general, there was no large population.
The Greeks barred for a time, or they...
The Greeks were barred from schools up until about 500 BC.
Okay.
And they began to go in with Pythagoras, with Anaximander, Anaximenes, a whole host of pre-Socratic Greek students went to Africa. Yes, and around 500.
And they would let them. What was the reason for that? For their not having been allowed to?
I don't know the reason for it. We just know that they were not permitted there.
Okay.
There was actually, according to George James, a bar against their admission.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I've taken you way off course.
That's okay. We're going back and see Senwosret II. Again, I want to show as many of these royal images as I can. Senwosret II. This is, remember we saw the first. This is the successor, Senwosret II, and then here's Amenemhet III.
And this is your Egyptian king.
This is an Egyptian king, Pharaoh, Amenemhet III again.
Can you go back to that other one?
Yes, we'll go back to the other one.
Now this is an Egyptian king.
Yes.
These statues, these images, and maybe we should say that these are not drawings recently done, or
no, these are carvings
recently.
that were done. This would have been done around 2,000 years before Christ.
Okay, now, these carvings were around all along.
Oh, they've been here.
All right. Why was it that you had European images when the Egyptian story was put on the screen?
Well, again, you have to remember what's happened. If you look at Egyptology and if you look at Hollywood, Europeans have claimed African history for themselves. And so you'll get Yul Brynner, Carlton Heston portraying Egyptians. You'll get Vivian Leigh and other European actors and actresses. And so after a while, the public begins to believe that this is what they really look like. We had these images that we could look at, and we could get people who look like them, but they did not do it.
Now, we talked earlier about the minstrels period and where whites blackened their faces, poking fun, etc., at blacks. But can it not be said that that the minstrels period began when whites sought to portray the Egyptians, ancient Egyptians, as whites?
That would be a true minstrel. That would be a true minstrel, because that clearly is not, I mean, it does not accord with the record.
Oh, but
at all.
let's look at the Menemet again, please.
Okay, he's a very important pharaoh. This is another image, and I want to get to this one of him. This is the same person, Amenemhet.
An Egyptian king.
Egyptian king. Let's go back to the chart.
I'm saying that repeatedly because I know. Go ahead.
Okay, let's go back to the chart. Here he is back here, Middle Kingdom. His Greek name is Memnon. So when we go to Greek literature down here, and the Greeks began to write about their heroic age and their connection with Africa, we can actually find in Africa these people that the Greeks talked about.
But nobody told me that when I was going to school.
Well, you're looking at great Memnon, and so I'm telling you this so that if you go back to school,
this is Memnon.
You can carry to those who would teach our children the kind of information that they need to have. When, in fact, there are two statues that are misnamed Memnon in the Valley of the Kings, because when the Greeks first got over there, they thought they finally had found the home of Memnon. They just saw two giant statues, and turned out it wasn't Memnon at all. It was one of Amenhotep the third. But
so his African name was
Amenemhet.
Okay.
God Amen comes forth.
Okay.
Notice he looks almost like he's got dreadlocks on here, the braid. That was very prominent in the ancient Kemetic. Now, let me go back to the chart again, because this is also very important.
Okay.
We now have skipped from this period to this period. In other words, we've left the second golden age, the Middle Kingdom, and we now go to the third golden age. Golden Age 1, Old Kingdom, 2, Middle Kingdom, Golden Age 3. Now let's take a look at some of the things going on in that golden age. Okay, we have this university. This is a scale model of the University of Ipet Isut, which is the oldest university system in human history. This system, at one point in the 18th dynastic period, which would be around 1500 to 1300 BC, enrolled almost 80,000 students. They had a full faculty with the subjects of grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, astronomy, geometry, and music, what we call the 7 liberal arts. This was the educational system that was in place at the time that Greek people came to Kemet.
Now go back and show who the people were that established this.
Okay, the people, the ones
images you showed earlier.
Okay, the images that we're showing are these people. See, now I just skipped back to the 12th dynasty, but in this dynasty, these people were teaching trigonometry. In other words, we have papyri with math problems on them, the Rhind papyrus, the Moscow papyrus, with problems on them. These papyri were written in the 12th dynasty, and they had problems not only in geometry, but also in trigonometry. That just gives you an example of how much, how highly developed mathematics was.
So if that was the king, you can imagine how the population looked.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Well, we have pictures of the population, too. Now, this is the University of Ipet Isut in the city of Waset. Waset meaning the scepter. Ipet Isut meant this was the most select place. And this is now called the Temple of Karnak. So if you go to Kemet today, to Egypt today, you will see the remains of this temple, the giant pillars, which provided the model for the Acropolis, the Parthenon on the Acropolis, all these Greek structures, and what we call Greek architecture in Washington, D.C., are really copies of this architecture that was produced in the 18th Kemetic dynasty. This is the man who designed that structure. In other
Karnak.
words, this is the man who was the architect for Karnak. And he was also like the president of the university. His name is Amenhotep, son of Hapu. This, now we skip again.
Going back to the chart?
We're going back to the chart
Okay.
because what I want to show is that this dynasty that has Ipeti Sut in it was actually started here by this man that we will now see. We will see the first mummy that I've shown you. In fact, the only mummy I'm going to be able to show you today. But his name is Seqenenre. He starts here, he moves these Hyksos out and begins this golden temple age that I'm talking about. Okay, now this is Seqenenre. Now, I'm showing this because all the mummies of the royal mummies of these golden ages are black people. Big argument about whether they were really black or whether they were only black because of the embalming process, which prompted Professor Diop from Senegal to conduct a melanin dosage test. In other words, there's a way to tell on mummy skin as to whether this really is a black person or not. His test is very simple, which is that you take the chemical ethyl benzoate and you treat the skin, put it under a slide, put it on a slide, a microscope, and a 100-watt bulb, and the melanin molecules, granules, will fluoresce so that they can be counted. And tightly packed melanin granules will be indicative of black skin, and if it's white skin, it'll be less melanin. And the melanin does not deteriorate over time. So if it was a black person when they live, that melanin is still in the remains of the mummy. And so he actually did that kind of study on mummies in Paris at the Museum of Man, and found that these were indeed black people, but was never given permission to examine the rest of the mummies in the Cairo Museum.
Okay, would you talk about Set for a minute? I want to make a point. Set.
Set was the brother of Asar or Osiris. And Set, that's the first Cain and Abel story. Set killed Osiris, cut him up into 14 pieces. Some people say 28 pieces. Got rid of his body, and then that body was sought by Isis, who collected the pieces back together again. And well, first he was just simply killed, and then she brought the body back, and when she did, Set decided he would cut up the pieces because he feared the resurrection of his brother. He scattered those pieces around. Isis went out and gathered these pieces together again. And Osiris was resurrected, and his son avenged his father. Horus actually fought with his uncle and became Lord of the world. That's the
So Set
story.
was the evil one.
Set was the evil brother.
Okay, I asked that, to actually talk about that because, you know, the Journal of African Civilization had an issue with Dr. Diop,
Yeah.
where he talked about mentioned the fact that the ancient Egyptians would kill on sight anybody that had red hair. And I was reading the New Larousse Dictionary of Mythology, and there was a segment there on Set. And he said that, it says that Set, the evil one,
Right.
who later became, I guess, Satan, was wild with white skin and red hair. So does it make sense that a people would, if they were black, you know, would they make their, if they were white, would they make the devil white too?
like themselves.
Like
Most
themselves, right.
Right. If people are going to draw negative images, they always project those images onto someone unlike themselves, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can do it. Do we have time for a few
Oh,
more
go
slides?
ahead. Yeah, we got.
Okay. This is Nefertari, who is the wife of the first king of the 18th dynasty, that great golden age. It's really important to have her because most of the people in the United States know about Nefertiti, but nobody knows Nefertari. And yet Nefertari was, in fact, a more prominent queen, was actually the mother of Kemet, was actually an ancient Egyptian rather than a Persian. which, according to some of the historians at least, Nefertiti was not really an Egyptian at all. Okay. Okay, this is the temple of Hatshepsut that is in the Valley of the Kings, the first well-known woman to rule Kemet. They had several women who were the actual pharaohs of Egypt. And this is the temple of one, and this is the designer of her temple. This is Senenmut, the architect of the temple of Hatshepsut in the 18th dynasty. This why you can see why I call it the Temple Age. This is her nephew, Tutmosis III. This is one of the high priestesses of the 18th dynastic period. This woman's name is, I picked this because it's such a well-preserved mummy, and if you could, I guess we don't have as clear a shot as I'd like, so you see hair texture and all is still shown. She looks a lot like a Maasai woman. Her name is Anut Tawi. That's also 18th dynasty. This is Amenhotep III, the father of King Tut. This is Amenhotep III's wife.
Can you go back to...
Yes, we'll go back to Amenhotep III.
Yes. Now, this is who now?
This is King Tut's father. And also Pharaoh Akhenaten's father, the founder of monotheism. Some people think he's the founder. That's not true, but monotheism is older than Akhenaten. That's another program. So this is Amenhotep III. This is Amenhotep III's wife, Queen T. Again, this was a queen that they could easily project just like Nefertiti, but no one ever sees her.
Where are these images? In the textbooks, etc.?
They're not in the textbooks. They're in the Cairo Museum, in the archives. But and she was a very important queen. Now, this is Akhenaten, the son of that king and queen, who became pharaoh and developed a brand new religion, and took Egypt in a different direction. This is his wife, Nefertiti. Now you can see why she becomes so famous. When you compare her to Nefertari or to Queen T, she looks more, she has more of the image of a European. She, in fact, according to historians, was Persian, and that she was supposed to marry Pharaoh Akhenaten's father, but he died before Akhenaten, before she could get to Egypt, and so she married the son Akhenaten instead. Now, even though she was Persian, the chances are that she was still African in the sense of race, as shown on this tomb of hers. That's also Nefertiti. Let me show Nefertiti here, and let's look at her tomb. Now, this picture of Nefertiti, we don't even know is Nefertiti for sure. It was found on the floor of an artist's workshop. But this is the most famous image of Kemet anywhere in the world.
You say artist workshop, artist where?
In Kemet.
Oh, in Egypt, okay.
In Egypt, yes. Okay, then we have, this is the material that I was quoting, showing that according to Moray, she was actually Persian, the daughter of a Persian king rather than Egyptian. These are the daughters of Pharaoh Akhenaten and Nefertiti. They were said to be deformed because they have long heads. In other words, they were not normal Europeans, according to the people who said that. But here are Africans all over Africa who have the same head shape. In other words, that's the most typical head shape that you find in the African population. That's from East Africa and also from West Africa. Okay, here's King Tut, who was the brother of Akhenaten. This is the golden mask. Keep this image in mind when I show you the next slide, because the next slide will be a picture of a news advertisement for the King Tut exhibit in Los Angeles, coming out of the Los Angeles Times. Okay. I want you to show you the real thing, then I want to show you what an artist does, and that will give you an indication of why we should never accept artist sketches. Should always ask for the original document or the original carving if we can possibly see it. So here's King Tut the way he looked to his artist. Here's King Tut the way he looked to the artist in the Los Angeles Times. He's become Caucasoid. And we go back and take a look at the way he really looked, and then this is how he looked in the advertisement at the...
he becomes white.
He becomes white. And this happens frequently with the Egyptian figures as they appear in sketches. And this is the reason that we recommend against the use of sketches in textbooks, and wherever possible, we ought to have photographs, and even better than that, we ought to have the actual object, because even in photographs, it's possible that the color is not a true rendition of the color, as I indicated with Queen T. In black and white, you really don't pick up the natural color of the statue as it appears, and it's really better to have a color picture. And then, of course, look at what's happened to King Tut by the time it gets to the children. So let's go back and look at this again. We start out with the golden mask, the way he looks. This is the way the adult population will pick it up in the advertisement in the newspaper. And this is how we will tell the children about King Tut.
So this is an example of what?
This is an example of actually changing history to deny to African people their own history and to give that African history to someone else.
Because we saw his father earlier.
We saw his father. We saw him. We saw him. I go back and just look at. This is what he looked like.
That's the mask, though,
That's
right?
the mask. I even have his mummy. You know, and I don't have the mummy in the show, but the mummy looks like the mask. Not like the artists who drew these art pictures here in the 1900s. Okay, we skip now on the chart to the 25th dynastic period here. And I'm just going to run through these because there were some other pharaohs, and I just want to be able to give the contrast. Each of these dynasties that I've picked to emphasize are the main dynasties. These are the golden ages, not the invaders' dynasties. These are the native African dynasties. Now let's look back at the pharaoh. What did he look like? This is Pianki. You had Kashta, Pianki, Shabaka, and so forth in that 25th dynastic period, and Teharka. Okay? Now, this is also the dynasty that is associated with Mexico, 25th dynasty, around 700 BC. We think that we have excellent proof that these were the people who became a part of the Olmec civilization in Mexico and who left their images there in stone. And we don't have time to go into detail about this.
Which would mean that Africans were here.
Were in America before Christ, not just before Columbus, but before Christ. And again, when we say these things, we have, we're not talking about a piece of pottery. We're talking about an actual rock Polaroid of the images of the people.
I like that, rock Polaroid.
Rock Polaroid. See, here they are again. These are the giant Olmec heads outside Mexico City in several places, Tres Zapatas, La Venta, these locations in Mexico. You notice the contrast. Okay, this is no longer a pharaoh. In other words, now we have moved to this period here,
on the chart,
which is the Greco-Roman period. And the image that I'm showing you now in the Greco-Roman period is the image of Alexander the Great. So we now have a foreign invader that will establish Greek rule for 300 years. The important thing about these invaders is that they not only establish political rule, but they do something very strange for an outside power. They begin to imitate the culture of the people that they conquered. So they begin to dress like Africans. They begin to embalm their bodies like Africans. They adopt an African religion. They go to school in Africa and pick up African science and go back and create universities like Africans. They build their buildings like Africans and so forth. And
if you were a robot right now, I'd punch fast forward.
Yes, you fast.
I'd push, that's right, but our time is tight now.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay, well, fast forward. Alexander the Great, the Ptolemaic general following Alexander the Great. Notice he's dressed like a pharaoh here. Here is the Ptolemaic pharaoh on the left being administered to by Egyptian gods on the Temple of Horus.
The Ptolemaic pharaoh, you're talking about Greeks?
Those are Greek pharaohs who began to recreate. They picked up all these temples that had been knocked down and rebuilt them, but they put their own images on these temples. So many people go to Kemet today and they see these images and they say, well, where are the, we thought you said that these were African people, not knowing that most of those temples were refurbished in the time of the Greeks and the Romans.
Okay.
Yeah. You say that we have to stop now.
No, no, go ahead.
Go
ahead. I want you to go ahead.
You want me to hurry?
That's right.
Okay, they begin to mummify their bodies. This is an example of Greco-Roman mummies. You saw earlier one mummy of ancient Kemet. Well, Egyptians had been mummifying their bodies for years, but it's a very significant step when people who primarily relied on cremation suddenly shift over and start burying their dead and mummifying their dead that are buried in the African tradition.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
Why should black John Q. public care about all of this ancient history?
Well, for the same reason that white John Q. public cares a great deal about ancient European history. In other words, you can't go to school 3 days without being reminded of the greatness of Europe. And that, you know, and to told that Shakespeare, a knowledge of Shakespeare. In fact, there was a man who just published a book called Cultural Literacy, E.D. Hirsch, and in that he has 4,000 things everybody's supposed to know. And the biggest chunk of the list that he produced about what everyone in the world is supposed to know to be considered culturally literate is information on ancient European history, which is the Greco-Roman world. Okay. So why do they do that? Because they know that cultural unity is equal to political unity and economic power.
And so the person who's watching, who might be working at McDonald's or some college, it is important that their children see their images and read about themselves because what?
It is important because without self-knowledge, you have no orientation. In other words, it's like a person walking around with amnesia, with no memory. You don't really have a background to use to explain the experiences that you're having. So when any group of people disconnects itself from its own historical tradition, it is at the mercy of anyone else who comes along and tries to help them look at things on a day-by-day basis.
Quickly.
Yes.
What is wrong with the people always reading the history of another people?
Well, first, I think you should read everyone's history. But I think if we always read the history of someone else, we will become psychologically unbalanced. We will become people who do not belong anywhere, because it's clear that you can't belong to someone else's history.
You mentioned the thing about the sheepdog some time ago.
You want to hear the story of the sheepdog?
Quickly.
Okay.
You have a plane to catch, right?
Yes, I do have a plane to catch. So this has to be a short sheepdog story.
Right.
Okay. Basically, it's a true story about how sheepdog are trained, and that you train a sheepdog, a dog that you can whistle and tell him to go herd sheep. The owner can sit down on the hill, his master can sit on the hill, and this dog will run all over in the hot sun and herd sheep for him wherever he wants him to go by signal. And the way he trains a dog to do that is to put that dog as it is born into a pen with sheep. And this dog actually nurses and eats, it sucks on a sheep mother. And it grows up thinking it's a sheep. In other words, it has the body, intelligence, endurance, strength of a dog, but it has the mind of a sheep, so that it is then pliable, amenable. It can be trained to do things that are very undog-like, and do things even not in its own interest, do things that really are not beneficial to his sibling. For example, he could see a dog that was born at the same time that he was from the same mother, but if he never saw that dog until he was an adult, he would treat his own brother as if he's the enemy.
So the black child, the black student, who is always reading someone else's history exclusively,
is like a sheepdog? Yes.
Okay.
Is that what you were
let's get a quick one.
You want one or two more slides?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find it. Okay, here's a good one. I have collected together some of the images that we've been looking at, mixed them with images of African Americans and African people to emphasize the theme that you've heard before from Dr. Joseph Ben Jochanan, which says they all look alike. And what he's, of course, referring to is that no matter where African people have been dispersed throughout the world, that they still hold not only the physical image of Africa, but they also hold the cultural orientation of African people. And that may be a good slide to stop on.
Oh, really?
If you've got more time. I mean, as far as
with all that you have said. What is the most important thing that the black parent, the black child, the black teacher can do?
Okay. Speaking as an educator and as a psychologist now, in trying to identify the most urgent priority that I can find that will help us to do what we have to do. And that is, I think that there is...
What we have to do, the goal here is what?
The goal is unity and resurrection.
And liberation.
And liberation. Well, liberation for resurrection. As a people, not just as individuals, I think it's important for our people to be strong again. In order for that to happen, it means that there has to be a systematic activity, I guess I call it study, to restore memory. In other words, parents and children and teachers alike have to be re-educated. They have to have new information and new insights that give them a basis for looking in a different way at the experience that we happen to be engaged in. So that means a study of history. That means a study of culture. That means creating the institutions that will let us practice that history and practice that culture.
Is the answer money, necessarily?
I don't think the answer is, money would be great, but I don't think the answer is money. It's interesting to me that as I go around the country and look in African-American bookstores, that it's the grassroots people that seem to be buying the books. That many of the African-Americans who have gotten bachelor's, master's, and doctor's degrees are not readers. They're not using their minds to refresh their perspective, and many bookstore owners will tell you that.
So what does this tell you about the talented 10th?
It tells you that many of the talented 10th have been, according to Carter G. Woodson, miseducated.
Well, you haven't, and we thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's our program. Thank you.
have the name on my record, but everyone knows Larry Holmes was a legendary fighter. And if he was at his best, I couldn't stand a chance. He was a great fighter, great fighter, great fighter.
My father left home at my early age, and it was just my mother. My mother worked, she scuffled, she took every nickel and dime she could to clothe all of us. And remember, it was like 12 of us, 11 of us in the family. And we welfare, surplus, Salvation Armies, and handouts and whatever you want, or hand-me-downs. And that's the way we lived. And so I had something to fight for.
I started my boxing career in an anti-poverty program called the Job Corps. I entered the Job Corps to get a high school education because I was a dropout at 16. Lyndon Johnson started this program for underprivileged kids. And I went in actually to get another chance to play football. But it just so happened I found boxing.
I went to college. I got tired of going to college. So I went home. My dad said, if you stay, you pay rent. So the next day I joined the Marine Corps. And as a result, I played football in the Marine Corps for one season. And then they started taking people off the team, and they started sending them to Vietnam. So I looked around, the only thing that was left was boxing. And if you became good enough, you became more or less propaganda for the Marine Corps, and they wouldn't send you.
I think boxing is the most outstanding game sports-wise in the world. And I mean, kings and queens and rich and poor and the robbers and everybody else is in the boxing. And boxing has made a living to make money for everybody. So I had nothing bad to say about boxing but love it.
Just imagine, I had 112 amateur fights, all those pro fights on, and look at me. Look at my nose, perfect shape, lips, face. Now, I'm not boasting. And it's hard to be humble when you're as pretty as I am. In 1954, the Columbia Gym, they call him, somebody stole my life. There was a police officer downstairs named Joe Martin. He was training boxers and told me to learn to fight, so if I find the boy stole my bike, I could beat him up. I had medals, belts, titles, but no money, so I turned pro. 1961, $3,000. And my mother paid off some bills. I kept a couple hundred. I liked that, and I kept fighting. And went down to Florida with Angela Dundee and started from there.
Oh, 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 let my people go. Get them out of the pot!
And if this nigger thinks he can scare the niggers out, I'll also inform him that the white man can be stirred up to defend what is right for us.
I'm only bold and cocky before and after fight. Let me see you close your mouth and just keep it closed.
Well, you know that's impossible.
No, keep it closed.
You know that's impossible. I'm the greatest. And I'm knocking out all bums. And if you get too small, I'll knock you out.
Now close your mouth, but just let me see you keep it closed for 10 seconds.
Well, that's impossible. You know that's impossible.
Henry Cooper's nothing to me. If this bum go over 5 rounds, I won't return to the United States for 30 days. That's final.
Okay, since you're not worried about this guy Cooper, how about when you get through with him? What are your plans after that?
Well, you're right. I'm not even worried about this big bum. Cooper will only be a warm-up until I get to that big ugly bear, Sonny Liston. Right, bodyguard?
Right, right. I walked into London, England. I jumped off the airplane.
Picture, cameramen, everywhere I go. You can look in the gym today. The TV, the cameramen, everybody follows me. I'm so great. The 5th round came. Yeah, hit him. Yeah, I said, come on, sucker. Yeah.
Oh, there's a vicious cut over Cooper's eye. The referee's looking at it. He has to stop the fight.
Man said, break it up. I said, there he is. There he is. And walked on out of the joint.
Clay wins by TKO.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cassius Marcellus Clay. He's young, he's handsome.
They know it.
He's a poet, a prophet, and many people believe he'll be the next heavyweight champion of the world. I saw Sonny Liston a few days ago, Cassius.
Ain't he ugly? He's too ugly to be the world champ. The world champ should be pretty like me.
Well, he told me to bet my life that you wouldn't go 3 rounds.
Well, if you want to lose your money, then bet on Sunday.
Oh, may I ask you
Because
this?
I'll never lose a fight. It's impossible. Tell him. It's impossible.
Never lost a fight in your life.
Ask any of my fans when was the last time they lost. I'm too fast.
Champion from
I'm
the
the
crib.
king.
King
Born
of
the
the
champ.
Born the champ from the crib. Ah!
And here in the 6th round, Clay is taking control of the fight.
Clay comes out to meet Liston, and Liston starts to retreat. If Liston goes back an inch farther, he'll end up in the ringside seat.
Sonny Liston has never before faced this type of opponent. Liston's timing is upset by the young challenger's hitting him on tackle.
Clay swings with his left. Clay swings with his right. Look at young Cassius carry the fight.
Pandemonium has broken loose. Sonny Liston has not come out for round 7.
Yes, the crowd did not dream when they put down their money that they would see a total eclipse of the sun. I am the king of the world.
Hold it. Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man.
Let's sing out
So
here.
great, I don't have a mark on my face.
Yeah.
And I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with me, can't nobody be against me, Sonny. I shook up the world.
I was more like a show shooter, a sharpshooter, a marksman. Everything that I went at that particular time, I made sure that it was on target.
Hey, hey, hey. Morning comes sunlight, shine upon my face. Here comes another day. Gotta move along.
I was the only guy in '64 who won a gold medal.
Second Liston fight, it was luck. It was luck, they said.
In the black trunks.
Clay came to beat Liston, so they came to lose the man. I said, I've invented the anchor punch. And it's so fast, slow motion cameras can't detect the speed.
A short, jolting right to the jaw, and Liston goes down. The champion refuses to go to a neutral corner, and referee Joe Walcott tries to push Clay away. Liston still hasn't heard a number and doesn't have the slightest idea what the count is.
I don't want to mess with your trainer. I just want you to know that from now on, you are the rabbit.
Floyd Patterson, the hare, the rabbit. George Cavallo, the washerwoman. And during the times we fought, I gave my opponents names. And I said, after I retired, there'll never be another one. And there haven't been nobody since me. I'm pretty, tall, giant, full of fun. He's cocky. So ringside, I heard people say, knock the nigga out, hit the nigga. These certain rednecks in the crowd. And black people themselves, they were homeless, they didn't vote. So when me, I am the greatest. I say things they want to say, but they're frightened. They want to say what I say. They want to talk back to the white master. They want to reject Vietnam. They want to be cocky. They want to be fearless. So they love me because they saw that in me. And this is what made me so popular. I never liked the word killing sting because my intention was to win, but never to kill. Even when I knocked the man out, I was happy to see him come back to. And it's not the action that makes the thing right or wrong, but the purpose behind the action. My purpose is not to kill, just to win, look good, beat the guy. And only Allah, God knows my intention.
Are you taking Zora Foley too lightly?
Why would you say that?
Because every indication has been that you're confident that you can beat Zora.
I'm confident I can whoop all of them. This ain't nothing new. My image has been confident. What you trying to make it look like something new for? I'm always confident I can whoop all of them.
You're being extremely truculent.
Whatever truculent mean, if that's good, I'm that.
question has been asked, what happens to a registrant who refuses to take the step forward at the induction ceremony?
We believe in obeying the laws of the land. We are taught to obey the laws of the land as long as it don't conflict with our religious beliefs.
Then he is returned to the ceremony room, given another opportunity to take the step forward which constitutes induction into the armed forces.
Whatever the punishment, whatever the persecution is for standing up for my religious beliefs, even if it means facing machine gun fire that day, I will face it before denouncing Elijah Muhammad and the religion of Islam. I'm ready to die.
You were very, largely responsible for the black community rallying after the death of Martin Luther King to be a proud race. How do you feel about that comment, Kenny?
Give up boxing for a while because of his religion. He was a man who believed in what he taught, what he said. Mm-hmm. And not many men will do that. Make a statement and stand by it no matter what.
You respected that?
I did.
George, can I ask you what it meant to you having a Muhammad Ali, a black leader? Did that mean something to you?
Limiting him as a boxer is injustice because he inspired people in basketball, football, even actors would see him and move up a notch. So this was probably one of the greatest men of all time.
As Kenny said, that you don't find a lot of people will give up anything, to give up what they worked so hard for, to lose it all to try to prove a point.
I don't believe in, let's say, Muhammad religious. That's his religion, and if he believes that's good. But I think if he had he didn't have to go to war. He had to fight nobody, he had to shoot nobody. I think he could represent the blacks as one of the greatest champions that ever lived. Just don't let it go and wave his hands up high. He never put a gun in his hand.
Reggie, I can't take no more.
You gonna go after him?
Today, we're able to announce that we will have open and we believe operating this summer, coast to coast, some 2,000 child development centers serving as many as possibly 500,000 children. We called our program Project Head Start.
I am a product of a compassionate America. I'm proof that when a country does not give up on its underprivileged, good things can happen. Probably it was the style to be compassionate during the 60s when I got my push. Of course, things go in and out of styles, and probably the last few years it has not been in style to be compassionate. And of course, I think that things are leaning toward that way, and then when it does, everybody can comprehend people convincing the poor that they can. Right now, it's just not in style. Probably the greatest thing that when I look back on it, being a 19-year-old in the 1968 Olympics, you don't believe that you can do anything like that. That they put in that uniform on you with the USA and robe you down with a parade uniform, and it's like a dream, and it didn't end, even until this day, it hasn't ended. Some kids grow up knowing that they're an American. I grew up out of the gutter, robbing and stealing, hiding from the police. I was told at maybe 12 years old, one of my cousins called me shooting hooky from school once. And I thought she was out of the house, but actually she was still there. I thought she had gone to work. I sneaked in the window. My mother had given me the lunch. I'd eaten my lunch, come back, sneak in the window to go to sleep. I hated school. And my cousin told me, when she called me, I tried to make an excuse like a guilty person do. She said, don't worry about it, you're nothing. You're never going to be nothing anyway. She said, go to sleep. She said, nobody from around here ever become anything but drunks.
That's it, over to the corner, the technical term. Referee stops contest.
Generally, we would bow to the audience or the judge to show our humbleness. This time, after I won the match, I actually had won. I bowed to the judge, and I had the flag on my side. You forget about the complexion and all of this. You want everybody to know what country you're from. And everybody started cheering, so I started waving the flag. No demonstration or anti-demonstration. It was just an emotional moment. I wanted everybody to know that I was from the United States of America.
We were named after our slave masters when we first was brought to America. We were robbed of all knowledge of ourselves. If I said, here comes Mr. Chang Chong, you'd picture a Chinaman. If I said, here comes Mr. Khrushchev, you look for Russian. If I said, here comes Mr. Goldberg, you look for Jew. If I said, here comes Mr. White Cloud, you look for Indian. If I said, here comes Mr. Castro, you look for Cuban. Here comes Mr. Lumumba, Mr. Kenyatta, you look for African, a black man. Now, what's your last name?
Whatever I get involved in, I want to be the best at it, and I want people to be satisfied.
I would like to hear this from you, and I want the world and the cameras to hear. Who's the heavyweight champion of the world? One more time, we don't want no excuses. They may say the film was bad or the camera was broke. One more time, who's the champion of the world?
I just look at a fight at that particular time like it was my job. And I feel if I can do a good job, because I have to be good. And I have to study it, and I pay attention.
I'm ready, ain't no doubt about it now. I'm ready, don't stop me now. I'm ready, go ahead, give it all you got, 'cause I'm ready. I'm ready. Giving it all I got. Don't stop me. I'm ready. Ain't no doubt about it now. I'm ready. Go ahead. Go ahead and give it all you got.
And we fought in all the wars. And we still fighting in them. And still a nigga. What you mean if I believe in separation? I've recognized the fact that you believe in it. That's what your people believe in. What you mean you don't believe in it? No, you just talking crazy. Every city I go to, I can find a black neighborhood and a white neighborhood. And what you mean don't believe in it? How many Negroes live out here just in this big old neighborhood? You can't blame a black man for wanting to leave all this mistreatment. You must be crazy. So what you mean don't take white money? The only thing white about that money is the white pictures on it. What you mean white money? If that's the case, I should take off these clothes. You made them too. I shouldn't fly in your airplanes. What am I going to do? Just go out and lay down somewhere and hide in the mud hole?
Mentally, I was say I think it's wrong, but I see why at the time the people in authority did what they thought was right. It's just too bad they didn't recognize me for doing what I thought was right. So it kept me out of the game a while, made the comeback bigger, and most people recognize me today mainly from my beliefs that stood up for more so than the boxing. So I didn't believe in the war. I knew it was wrong. We shouldn't have been there, and I could see it. And later, God made it where I turned out to be right.
Hell no! We may have to back.
Boxing authorities, people who will rank Joe Frazier over me and rank him the champion when I've never been beat. I have the belt in my living room that John L. Sullivan had, Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Gene Tooney, Jack Johnson. Traditionally, I have the real belt. And for Joe Frazier to be a champion, he's got to beat me. See, those eliminations are only imitations. He's not the real champion.
It always been in my mind to face Muhammad because he was the guy that always on television running off at the lips and, you know, and say what he can do. I said, you know, I don't believe that.
Joe's gonna come out smoking, and I ain't gonna be joking. I'll be pecking and a-poking, pouring water on his smoking. Then this might shock and amaze you, but I will destroy Joe Frazier.
Is Joe Frazier your cousin?
That's right. He sure lives.
And you think your cousin can whoop me? You really do?
Anybody on my...
Anybody on your what?
Anybody in my family, I think, help me.
Anybody in your family can whoop me?
Yeah, it help me.
I'm sorry, Joe Frazier's your cousin. After I whoop Joe Frazier, you still gonna come in here and buy champ burgers? If I beat him, you gonna still buy champ burgers? All right.
But try not to.
Try not to. Try not to.
Make a face, my gentleman. You better watch out. You better not bring your hands up. Like that? Hold them like that. Bring it down. Raise the left leg. Left leg, right leg. And the other one. Now let's see the exercise. I want you to do it out here. Bend down 20 times, touching your toes. As fast
do it 20 times.
Some action. Quick, drop the ball. Oh, that again,
What happens if you're out there and the bell rings for the 11th? Isn't there a danger that you, having said it ain't going to go more than 10, that... So what do you think I must do? Turn around and jump out the ring, cut the bell, or something?
I'll show you what a real champion is. I'll show you what a real champion is. Take that thing on down. I ain't that heavy. Move it on down from this. I'll straighten it all out. 215 pounds. 215 pounds. You know he's in trouble. I gotta go now. Are we gonna go?
Frazier is not the easy target he used to be. He's bobbing and weaving all the time. And he's dangerous. His best punch the left wrist. Muhammad Ali's best punch the jab. And his good combination. First clinch of the fight. That was a hard left hook that caught Frazier. Frazier is more vulnerable in the first round, and Muhammad Muhammad Ali knows that. Muhammad Ali shakes his head and is warned for holding behind the neck. Muhammad Ali has been missing.
This is Joe Frazier fighting me. Punches around. See? This is Joe Frazier. It's time to block him. Well, he's doing, he's catching him, see?
Frazier has gotten wild. He's lost the good timing he had earlier. Lost the rhythm. That one hurt. So did that. Muhammad Ali was lost. He's holding on desperately. 30 seconds to go in the round. 30 seconds. Muhammad Ali in real trouble.
Joe Frazier and me, count of fours up. I've never been knocked out, never been really beat up. See, I was what you just want to say about Muhammad Ali. I never took no beating. I never been beat up. I never been really knocked out with a hand count 10.
Mohammed, what about that 3.5-year layoff? Just saw 15 rounds with Joe. I hit him 3 times as one. Just as strong as he. We both tired in the end. I think he was a little tired of. Because if he wasn't after getting me down like he did with the beginning of the round, he should have finished me. If he was really strong and had the strength, but I could see he wasn't. He was missing a lot of hooks. He was exhausted too. But he kept forcing it. But the 3.5 years, I think, did a lot, but I still have enough left to get away with things like that with Joe Frazier.
I really think the guy's kind of sick in the head, really. Because some part of the fight he rapped off and said, "Don't you know I'm God?" So he keeps saying it, you know what I mean? Every time he throw a punch, you know, "Don't you know I'm God?" And I got under some of them questions. I said, "Well, God, you're going to get whipped tonight."
Was there conversation during the 14 rounds?
I remember around 14, I was saying, "I'm crazy. I'm bad." He said, "I'm crazy
Don't
too."
you know I'm God?
I'm not God. I wouldn't tell you, "Don't you know I'm God?"
Yes, you say.
I don't know. You
said it.
You heard something wrong.
Told me you were God.
I hit you so hard, you
Nah, I didn't do it that hard.
Muhammad, during that fight that you lost, you said you'd kiss his feet.
I lied.
Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however,
it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort.
What worries me now is this belly I got. It just won't come off. Usually when I was young, I could run it and sweat it off. I'm exercising, I'm running, I'm training, and every day I look at my belly, it's the same size. Better wake up and apologize.
Muhammad Ali's sustained attack is beginning to wear Ellis down here in round 12. Ali banging home short, accurate punches. Ellis trying to defend against one of the fastest heavyweights of all time. The game, Jimmy Ellis, a thoroughly beaten fighter as the referee stops the contest.
I mean, I was scared of Joe Frazier. Nobody could tell me anything weak about him because I know there weren't any weaknesses. He'd even beat Muhammad Ali at this point. And my scheme, my part of psychology, from that point on early in my career, I would stare the guy down. I started getting in their face, looking them dead in the eye. If they would drop their face, I knew then I had this edge. But when getting ready to fight Joe Frazier, I had to look him in the eye. But I was hoping he wouldn't look down because my knees were uncontrollable. I couldn't stop them from shaking.
I used to look at guys like Henry Armstrong and watch how these guys throw punches, and Sugar Ray Robinson, and see Henry Armstrong was a guy that never stopped. He throw like 300 punches in a round and steady moving. So I said, if I can be like that, and I can do that and keep that pressure on him, he'll eventually break.
This time, I had watched Joe Frazier fight. Followed his whole career by being on his undercard. I remember seeing him fight Jerry Quarry, and I mean Jerry Quarry was putting it to Joe Frazier like nothing. And after 4 or 5 rounds, Joe Frazier went in front of the camera, looked at his trainer and said, "Whoo," as though he liked it. And I kept thinking, I want to become champion, but I hope Joe Frazier die first.
Foreman having a very good round. Frazier went down. Taking a mandatory edge. Foreman in complete charge of the fight. Frazier fighting back gamely, but he's having trouble. There's the countdown, 20 seconds to go. Frazier down.
Bell ringing and wondering, what am I going to do? And he came out and he threw this famous left hook and it just barely missed me. And it sounded like a pistol. No, like a rifle, a bullet just going past your head. And I knew then that if I didn't hurry up and get that fight over, that I stood not only a chance of losing the match, but really getting myself seriously hurt.
right now again, or will you fight Muhammad Ali? Right now, that was my main goal, was to win the World Heavyweight Championship. You got it now.
I knew I could beat Ali. In my mind, I told myself I could beat him. If I had not have done it, I would have put on such a good show. I would have done so much that I would have been seen and put in a position where I could do more and fight more. My person will become bigger.
See the way he's leaning over there, and you can't land a right hand. He just keeps leaning over away from it.
Plus the fact that when you're trying to land that left hand, that right hand...
Well, like chess, I make a move to make him make a move so I capitalize. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to get hurt. I just... It was competition, one-on-one, highest form.
Left by Ali puts the fans out of their seats at San Diego.
This is heating up. A good exchange of right hands. Ali looking to counter his left jab with a right hand over.
Oh, the quick right by Norton for the jaw of the ex-champion Muhammad Ali.
He rolled my jaw around too. And we went 10 more rounds. I didn't know it was broke. I just felt a little burning pain, so I took my teeth and kept my teeth closed because it felt better when I was holding them. I was actually holding the jaw in place. They found that after the fact it broke. If I knew my father's jaw was broke, I would stop. Why? You think I'm a fool? Me fighting with a broken jaw, somebody hitting in my face, hard punches, and my jaw already broke, a man hitting on the tooth might break it more? Man, that's a dumb question.
Norton wins. Norton wins.
Ali, in my mind, is the reason that there's so much money involved in sports today. Not only boxing, but football, basketball. It all started with Ali and his gift for gab and his showmanship and his receiving large purses. Because before Ali, purses were very minimal. During Ali's time, they grew. After Ali, they just exploded.
In the closing seconds of this fight. It's coming here from Los Angeles, and the near-capacity crowd has really enjoyed it as we have. Less than 20 seconds now, and Norton coming back here, pushing the former champion against the rope.
He knows
everything he's got into it.
He knows he's blown this last round, and he's blown all chances because he gave away too much to start this fight.
Less than 10 seconds remaining now. Will not be a knockout. It must go the distance, 12 rounds. A tremendous finish here put on by the former champion, Muhammad Ali, as the bell sounds, ending the fight. A split decision for the former champion of the world, I'm sure.
I like the man quite a bit. When I had an accident, my wife told me he was about the third person to the hospital in L.A. By the grace of God, I'm still living, because I should have died. I was going on the freeway in LA, on the Santa Monica freeway, and went to the top of the hill and something happened, went over the hill. It's about a 35-degree angle, and I went over the side, and there was one tree. I found it. I had a skull fracture, broke my jaw, broke my leg, blood clots, you name it. I've always been very physical in my life. And to be that way so long, and then all of a sudden have everything turn, and then you're more or less crippled. You know, it's very traumatic.
I guess if you've been around this guy long enough, you know what I mean, somehow you could have a lot of hate in your heart, you know, when that bell rings. But otherwise, you look at him and laugh, there's something wrong with the guy.
Oh, the second fight, I was more prepared than any other fights. I forced the whole fight, and let's say he did all the whole, and he bugged me all night long. I'm glad I didn't have no money on me, because he probably would take some from me.
Ali and Frazier visited our studios while preparing for their fight number 2 and to analyze their fight number 1.
He's gonna bring up the hospital. What's different? Why'd you bring up the hospital? I went to the hospital. Why you figure I'm ignorant? I went to the hospital. Why you think I'm ignorant? Man, you know, sit down. Sit down, man. Sit down, Joe. Why you think I'm ignorant? Sit down, Joe. Huh? Sit down quick. Why you think I'm ignorant? Sir, the brothers are here. Doing this too? Yeah. Sit down quick, Joe.
Well, we're having a scene, as you can see, and it's hard to tell whether it's clowning or for real between the two fighters. This kind of thing has been going on all along in terms of promotion of a fight, and this time it seems to be for real, because Joe Frazier is really angry. I think that Ali is probably clowning.
Frazier in trouble here in round 2. Here, referee Tony Perez, unbelievably, tells the...
And some people think maybe the referee or somebody has some money bet on Frazier and did that on purpose, thinking I'll knock him out. Let's just say it's that.
Ali pouring it on here at the end of round 2. This is the 12th and final round. Frazier looking for that knockout here in round 12. Joe is going all out. Frazier tearing in there with dynamite punches. A punishing left to the head by Joe Frazier. Pulling out all the stops here in the 12th round. And there's the end of this sensational fight. Muhammad Ali with a unanimous decision in one of the great heavyweight fights of all time.
For me, it wasn't a thing where I had to win. It was just a challenge for me to go in and take care of business and come out without getting hurt. There were three or four of my fights that I hit the man and it paralyzed him right there. It was a good shot, and I saw that he was gone. He couldn't do anything else, so I walked away.
Kenny Norton was a fearsome specimen to watch. He was a throwback to some of the old gladiators, so this man was really, you didn't want to, I was forced to fight the #1 contender. And that way I made up, of course I was matched with Kenny Norton. Didn't want that match.
Right hand, left-hand side of the face of Norton. Norton is a bit stunned as Foreman is taking off. And it looks like Norton has really been staggered and put up against the rope. The referee is giving this a count. Yes, you'll have to take the 8 now. Okay, 17, and here we go with Foreman just banging on in the second round. Norton goes down again. A left hand on the side of the head. Norton comes back and has to take another 8 now. No, he doesn't. His legs are rubbery as the left hand. Right uppercut, a left jab, and oh, big left. That's Norton falling again for a second time. Norton is in Frazier. He doesn't know where he is. It's up to 5, 6. I don't know if Norton can make it. It might be all over right here. It's up to 9, 10, and 8. Are they going to complete it, or are they going to stop it? It looks like it may be all over, and it is all over. George Foreman retains the heavyweight championship.
He hit Ken Norton just like he do all his opponents. Caught him out. I'm meeting his hard, but if a man can stay out of the way for 5 rounds, stick him, move, stay out of range, be in good shape, he'll retire George Foreman. This man depends on getting this man in the first 1 or 2 rounds. If he don't do that, he's frustrated. Stick him with left jabs and right crosses, tie him up and box him, and you'll retire. I'm the only man that's going to whoop George Foreman, and I'm going to whoop him of all places in Africa, in the Congo, where the Lumumba boys are.
Ali, now that you have your cool about you and you calm down at this point, I want you to answer this question. How could that man go 24 rounds with you and only 2 with the heavyweight champion of the world?
Because George Foreman is not as good of a fighter, scientific as I am, but I admit he's stronger and he hit harder. I'm not a hard puncher. I'm not known for being a hard puncher. I fought many men like Floyd Patterson, Zora Foley, George Chuvalo, who are stronger than I am. Many I couldn't knock out, Sonny Liston. But I'll tell you this, boxing ability, speed, whooping him on points for the distance if necessary. Then I'll whoop him.
Well, fight in your home territory. You couldn't be any happier the way this is coming up in September.
Why would you call Africa my home territory?
You've been telling me that for 10 years.
That's right, and if you come over there talking like that, we'll cook you.
George, tell me about the fight that you had with Kenny Norton.
I really didn't want that fight, but I was put in a position where I had to take it by the governing bodies, and I didn't want to fight Norton. But he was advised, I figured because he is so good, and so word go around that George Foreman keeps his head straight up, that he would try for a knockout. I think if the fight had gone 5 rounds, he could have whipped me too. But he started throwing big hooks early, and we got into an exchange, and I got the better of it. And I kept thinking, I remember I knocked him down. I said, I better get him while he's down, too. I even got him then. I didn't want him to get up. Oh, fart. I didn't want him to get up because I knew if this guy get warmed up, this fight would never end.
Did you try to go blow for blow?
I was going to go out, act like I was going to go toe-to-toe, make him load up, back off, and counter, and use my hook. But as you saw in the fight,
when he loaded up,
I backed up, and kept backing, and kept backing, and I stumbled.
Of course, I'd knocked out Joe Frazier and beat him convincingly, of course. Then I'd knocked out Kenny Norton, who was, I figured, the greatest physical specimen one could ever look at. And I was kind of afraid of Kenny Norton, but I did win the boxing match. I was able to eliminate guys pretty easily who had really given Muhammad Ali a whipping. So people were telling me, George, be careful, don't kill Muhammad. He's old, take it easy.
The adjectives used in the press has been beautiful. The more strong man they make this guy, the better I like it, because my father's got plenty to shoot for now. He's the underdog twice, going to shock the world and become the heavyweight champion of the world again. I've always said he's the greatest heavyweight of all time. He has to lick Foreman to make the press admit this.
I've been working 4 months for this fight. My weight today is 214 pounds. That's fight weight already. I'm way ahead of schedule. My timing, my accuracy, my reach will be 1.5 inches longer. The man is slower. The man is flat-footed. The man don't stand a chance. The stage has been set. This man is supposed to annihilate me. 10 years from Sonny Liston, I was supposed to get at that time. I think it's befitting that I go out of boxing just like I came in, shocking the world by beating a big, bad, ugly monster that nobody could beat.
I got into Africa 15 days prior to the boxing match, 10 days prior to the boxing match. I suffered a cut, and they wouldn't let me out of Africa. I found out quickly that all the airlines flying in and out were controlled by the people and the president of Zaire or whatever, and George Foreman could not leave town.
1 minute left in round number 1. The heavyweight championship between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, live via satellite, direct from Zaire, Africa. That punch did no damage. That one did. 2 wild right hands taken on the side of the head of Muhammad Ali. Ali continues to try to tie his man up. Back late, separates him. Wild left hand, vicious hook. There's a real strong right hand just underneath the heart. And Muhammad Ali is taking some punishment now. About 25 seconds left in the round. Ali, face left, goes to straight right hand. That right hand lead has George Foreman slightly confused, but a straight left jab thrown by Foreman. Has Ali in the corner. Ali dances back. Hangs on. What a tremendous, tremendous face in round number 1. A hook to the body of Muhammad Ali. Jack Layton, the referee, separates them. About 8 seconds left in the round. Round 1. Foreman and Ali ending round 1.
If it has 7 rounds of this, I'll be finished.
So I realized this, I stopped and let him burn his energy while I lay on the ropes. Doing the gimmick called the rope-a-dope.
Foreman setting him up against the rope.
Good shot. You know what he told me? That's all you got in your arms.
Why he continues to taunt him. Ali's super confident. Foreman looks unusually slow with his hands. Look at this. All of a sudden he opens up. 4 punches downstairs on Ali. Ali, of course, has protection around that area he was being hit by. Ali showing the ability to punch inside against George Foreman. Now the fight is across the ring. A right hand lead by Foreman this time. Another right hand. A good right hand taken on the left side of the cheek on the jaw of Muhammad Ali. The best one so far for George Foreman. I don't know the start, but it did spin the head around of Muhammad Ali. I have to say the heaviest punch so far was definitely landed by Foreman in that exchange. Ali trying to hang on. Might have been just stunned by that blow. Vicious right hand. By the nose of Ali. Ali continues to talk, continues to taunt. 30 seconds left in round number 3. Foreman looking for his opening to unload that left hand underneath the heart of Ali and drop the right. There he goes to the right, but it just didn't land that time. Very even fight. 10 seconds left now in round 3. Ali showing his domination. The hands left, right, left.
Hitting him so hard in his chest. And it, not only did it hurt him, it sort of dehumanized him. He looked at me as if to say, I'm not going to take that from you. And he came after me, he remembered the pain, and then he said, forget it, he covered up.
A couple of my trainers, get off the ropes, move, move. So I told him I'm going to fight my way, I'm going to do it my way, and shut up.
To finish him off 2 rounds, I said, I'm going. I don't care about the 5, 6 rounds. I'm going to knock him out in 2 rounds. 3rd round, he was still there. I said, well, who cares? I'm not going to pace myself. I'm going to knock him out. Finally, after 5 or 6 rounds, I was burnt out. This experienced great athlete withstood all of his pain because I hit him with some of the hardest shots I ever delivered on a man. It would knock him back and out. He would literally stand there and wake up again.
Very even fight. Sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand. This time he worked over the shoulder of Foreman.
I burnt myself out, and he caught me with a right hand just as I was walking and following him without any respect, just trying to get one shot in. Tricked me, moved off the rope with this lightning speed that he was not supposed to have at this age. A 1-2 combination caught me right on the chin. I said, I can't believe it. I hit the floor. Actually, I hit the floor again with my fist. I waited for my corner to tell me to get up. A boxer is not supposed to get up. He's supposed to wait until his corner say get up. My manager told me to get up. He counted for me. When I jumped up, the fight was over. I had lost the heavyweight championship of the world to Muhammad Ali, and there he was with his hands raised. And I had to eat crow feet.
Talking now, attention. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time when I beat Sonny Liston. I told you today I'm still the greatest of all time. Never again defeat me. Never again say that I'm going to be defeated. Never again make me the underdog until I'm about 50 years old.
That's right.
Then you might get me. I told you I'm the real champion. I told you I'm the champion of the world. All of you bow. All of my critics crawl. All of you suckers who write the Ring magazine.
All you who criticize Muhammad Ali, I want you to bow, crawl, crawl, because I'm back. Thought I was gone, thought I was old, washed up, thought I couldn't talk no more, thought I was through. And they tell the whole world I'm back. It might be the first black man to go on the moon.
Come to Muhammad Ali.
Do you think to this day that the ropes were made loose that night on purpose?
Everybody needed an excuse. I couldn't live with myself without an excuse, so I blamed it on the rope, I blamed it on everything. That devastated me. I was undefeated. I never had lost a boxing match.
You had a difficult time with it.
And so I couldn't adjust to that, so you give me an excuse, I was picking them up out of the air. Oh, yeah. My shoes were too big, anything.
People want to see me and Joe Frazier. They still think Joe Frazier can beat me. And I got his conscience right here to keep me on guard. See, here's the way he looks when you hit him. Come on, gorilla. This is a thriller.
I think a lot of people thought, and myself included, that you didn't like it. And you used it.
No, I didn't like it.
You used it to get yourself fired.
You trying to start something?
No.
No, I'm just asking a question.
No, I really didn't like it because, number one, I know the fact that it wasn't the base of trying to get any more people, let's say, butts in the seats, because we all had guaranteed. I know that he was out to get me and out to hurt me more than anything else. The words was more hurting to me than, let's say, the punches.
In the pre-fight commentary.
That's right. The punches mean nothing to me, you know.
What were some of the things that bothered you?
He called me Uncle Tom. I never knew what Tom was. You know, I thought it was a guy that peeped through windows or something, you know? And I never peeped at no window.
It's peeping Tom.
He called me Tom. I thought it was peeping Tom.
Our main event will go this handsome trophy donated by...
People tell me, and I think the boxing authorities also admit that the Frazier fight in the Philippines was about the best, action from round 1 to round 13. Every minute, moving and punching.
But it was the same thing again. I was behind in the particular fight. I was the points I was behind in that fight, you know. And it was like maybe 100 to 25 or 30 degrees in the ring or more.
Ali won by the referee for grabbing around the neck.
And it's not really in the disrespect to him, but I feel comfortable about it because we had 3 fights, and you look back on the films today and you watch them, and you know who won them all.
Frazier looks awful tired, is puffed around both eyes now.
It was just as many blacks had want to see his lips closed as white. You know, it didn't make no difference because he didn't believe in whether you were, let's say, white or black. He was more in his religion. That's what it was. If I wasn't a Muslim, you know, you wouldn't move. You were just bad as being white. You know what I mean?
bet 2-1 for you.
Although you don't need the money.
Joe Frazier still wants to meet me today. Oh, that might be a good joke. If you're watching this, after I come back from Kong, your son, I'll come back for you. So I'm not going to say nothing bad about Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier, I love you. You're brothers. You're my man. And I ain't going to let this man start another fight. It's always some white man trying to get two brothers to fight. And I ain't going to let this white man get me in trouble.
And here comes Joe Frazier. A man who has brought nothing but decency and integrity and indefatigable effort to his trade. And look what he's done. Look what Joe Frazier has done. He shaved his head. Frazier trying to fight back. Foreman dominating. Round 5. Foreman got in good comment. And again, you saw it there. Frazier's hurt. Frazier's hurt again. One right hurt Frazier. Frazier's down. Frazier is down from a right. The mandatory 8-count. George Foreman looking revived tonight. Frazier getting the left. Frazier getting the right. Frazier taking it from George Foreman. Foreman again with the right. Second knockdown in the round. One more knockdown. This fight is over. George Foreman struggling to Frazier, struggling to his feet. George Foreman poised in the neutral corner. Look out. In total command now. And Harold Vallon says the fight is over. George Foreman wins in the 5th round by a technical knockout.
Over 10 years ago, I stopped boxing. At an age where everybody said, hey, you shouldn't do it. I became a full-time evangelist. And I would read articles about George Foreman as a coward. He's scared. He's trying to make him an excuse. He's got a crutch. He's a coward. Now he's using the crutch as the Bible. The Bible is a crutch. I had to eat all that up, and I did eat it for 10 years. And I took on that challenge and was a full-time preacher and minister and took care of churches and built them and traveled around the world, giving my testimony when a lot of people looked at me oddly. That was the true challenge. The true challenge was not the staring Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali down, but picking up a Bible and going around the country telling people that God loves you.
I feel good. How I look? I feel good. When I walk about 12 miles in the morning from here to Holiday Inn. About 12 miles. And some days I go to the gymnasium and work out 12, 13 rounds on the bag jump rope. I don't feel no physical weakness or sickness. They say I have Parkinson's syndrome, but I don't shake. And people with Parkinson's, that's what I'm supposed to, sometimes start speech, and I believe that I have something. It's nothing critical.
I feel that my main asset is going to be given by Ali because of the fact that, as I stated before, that he's going to stand there more now. He says he's not going to move as much, and he's going to walk to me more. So therefore, his head is going to be my main asset.
On his toes, Thornton still doesn't know how to solve the style. Thornton's got to trap him on the rope. Al grabs him.
I won one fight, and the second fight, he won my split decision, correct? Going either way. But the third fight, Yankee Stadium, I thought I won.
Sliding along and punching all the time. He's sliding 55 seconds to go. Ali's won at least 2/3 of this round. Can he keep it up? Can Norton do something spectacular?
The fight, more or less, was at a turning point in Ali's career. If he had lost, he was taking a lot out of the sport. So I wasn't just battling the man. It was the game.
Out of Norton's grasp. Oh, he threw a haymaker but missed. Ali comes back with a flurry. Most not landing, but big one. Another big right hand. Another big right hand by Norton. All he did was catch air with those right hands. He's desperate. He knows he's blowing the title. But another right hand. Connects, and he misses with a left and almost falls down as Ali pushes him off of the jet. A good right hand catches Ali, and the crowd comes to its feet with less than 10 seconds. Ali holding on. Norton is desperate. 6 seconds, 5. The bell is about to ring to end this fight at Yankee Stadium, and we'll be back with a decision. Oh, Norton's screaming at him. Muhammad Ali, still heavyweight champion of the world, and in this corner, Norton is crushed.
He had no name, no prestige, no threat, so I said, I'll beat this guy. So I didn't really train like I should.
Tremendous action by the champion here. Where has he been for the previous 14 rounds? We are under 40 seconds. Another desperation left, missed by the challenger. Ali onward, but still pursuing, hoping, praying that perhaps one of these punches will connect, and the gallant challenger, Leon Spinks, will fall. 24, 23 seconds. Spinks dead tired. Dead tired. It looks like he was out, but he came right back, and now it's Ali that's showing the signs of where it is. He didn't. That's really a shuffle forward. Now it's 13 seconds. Now Leon, having him against the rope, is throwing everything he can. It's 8 seconds away, or he's lost it. He's just hammered Ali. Ali looks like he's in trouble. He's leaning against the rope. It's 2 seconds. It's 1, and it's a bell. A tremendous right hand. Look at Ali stagger back.
People thought I'd throw the fight, some do, with Spinks first time, because I lost close and came back and beat him to win the title 3 times. They think that was a setup, and it wasn't. If it was, I wouldn't have brought it up.
Some superhuman effort in him. He will kiss his crown goodbye. Well, good right hand by Spinks. The old butterfly is spinning again. Well, Bobby, there it is, 11 seconds. 11. There'll be no knockout, that's for sure. And then there was going to be one. 8, 7. That is about it, folks. Look at it. Ali is the world heavyweight champion.
I fought Kenny in 1978. I was in good shape, but I had a problem. I had one arm. I pulled a muscle 6 days before the fight, and I didn't really want anyone to know it. And so I just did road work and go in the gym and shadow box. And when Kenny Norton time to work out, I go over and try to take his concentration away from him because I wanted to take away from the rumors that were going around with me hurting my arm or something other. It meant something to me when I fought those guys. It meant something to me when I went in the ring with Kenny Norton and Muhammad Ali, and it was a sparring partner for Joe Frazier. And when I walked into the room and George Foreman says, Larry Holmes, you know, it means something.
It's a big round for Kenny Norton, I'm afraid. In the waning moments now, the round.
I never
Larry is fighting desperately.
was serious enough about boxing. I never really put myself into it to the point where it was that or nothing.
This has been a great boxing show. Both fighters courageous as Holmes comes back, scores a big shot. He's getting into trouble. Yes. He's got to follow up. Uppercut scores. Running out of time, and that's it. It's all over. Larry Holmes has done it. We have a new heavyweight champion.
Well, I knew that I could beat Muhammad years before I fought him, a couple of years before I fought him, because I was his sparring partner. And being a sparring partner, I got the opportunity to watch him, to learn from him, and to be around him a great deal.
In the blue corner, the challenger, the three-time heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali. Fighting out of Easton, Pennsylvania. He is going for a record 8 straight KO in the heavyweight title defense. He is the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Larry, the Easton Assassin, Holmes.
Whether Ali can pressure Holmes early enough to get to him to cause him trouble. He wants to prove he's got it over Ali.
To me, he's a legend. He was a legend, he's still a legend. And you don't want to fight anybody like that, especially a guy who helped you.
Yes, but Ali hasn't thrown any punches yet either.
The time was off, and he saw the punches, couldn't take it. They tell me that's old age. You see it and you can't take it. See it coming, you can't get away. That was age.
I think he popped him pretty good.
The closing seconds now in round one.
I didn't have no charisma, they would say. They didn't want me to have charisma. I had charisma, but in my own way. I had the charisma. I didn't want to go out and say, I am the greatest. See, Muhammad did that. That was his thing. And if I did that, they would say, you stealing the line from Muhammad Ali. And if I say, Muhammad Ali float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, but don't forget he met Larry. They would say, now you're writing poems, trying to be like Muhammad Ali. So, you know, everything that I said and done, I was on the border. I was right on the edge. I could fall right off. And so, therefore, I tried to stay away from the press as much as I could, because any little thing that I said would hurt me. When I took the name Muhammad Ali, and people heard the name Muhammad Ali in America, champion, all the Egyptians says Muhammad Ali's Muslim, all the Arabians, Indonesians, Pakistan, Africa, and Libya, all the Afghanistan, Morocco, Pakistan, they all said Muhammad Ali, a Muslim, a world champ, his first time. That made me famous.
I think it's right.
I only fought a fair fight. I trained too hard to fight. I didn't make an excuse. I should have did better. I was more worried about my weight than really conditioning.
Larry just continues to tee off the whole story of the fight. And Holmes throwing punches and Ali doing nothing, just taking shots.
100 degrees heat and didn't sweat. Something's wrong.
Come on, that's it. Dig in, dig in. Bring it up, Big Jack. Here goes down.
He's taking his dues, but it's just a time down.
He could lay down as soon as he found out that his arms weren't working. He's staying there. Title is one thing. It's not like losing a job or losing your life or losing your wife. He said that's lost. He handled it with dignity.
Check him out. And the Angela wants his force to start the fight. And they all have bargained with it.
Champion, the people's champion, as I wanted to be while I was fighting. The guy who gave opportunities to fighters that wouldn't have got opportunities. A fighter who accomplished and set examples. The guy who, like, walked the road that he wanted to walk.
I want them to have the record straight that I was a good boxer and that I did fight some of the top contenders and that I did fight for the championship of the world and won it fair and square. If I can be remembered and have my name called in the same fashion as, like I said, Jack Dempsey, Muhammad Ali, and Joe Frazier, I'll be a happy man. I'll be pretty contented with that. I don't want to be remembered as the greatest at all. I just want to be remembered as a good boxer.
An intelligent being, a caring being, an individual, even though he was very competitive, I was in his heart that he never wanted to injure anyone, and that he was a man that believed in God.
Boxing is good to me. I love it. It just bothers me when I have people trying to shut it down. I mean, if you didn't make it good or you didn't make a couple of bucks and you wasn't a good leader, I don't give you the right to knock it down, because boxing, I've put a lot of bread in a lot of people's pocket. Same thing as love.
Listen, I don't have to say on the race. When I quit boxing, the game died. Didn't it die? The Tyson came along. But still, when you watch Tyson, he's good, but he's no Muhammad Ali.
The story of pain and worry. Now when I look at you, see it in your eyes, deep inside. Dreamers, who are the dreamers? You all know who you are, what you're meant to be. I can see. Champions forever, fighters for life, caught in the battle with the will to survive. Champions forever, legends in time. You give inspiration to this heart.
It's fair. See Tyson stick move. Fast, look at him. Can't see the man. And when I say go, you just want to hit you 10 times.
Okay.
Ready? Before we tell you I say go. Go.
What's up?
Want to see it again?
I could beat all those guys in my prime.
The boxers.
If they would take the book and study me as my career goes, I would have to be the greatest of all time.
I never heard boxers talk until I started. Now they're all out talking to me.
The job of a champion is to get the championship. Make as much money as you can without risking it, your title. Mike Tyson is the champion. Now he's going to try to make as much money as he can without risking the title or being hurt. I could be champion of the world right now if I'm given the opportunity. The only thing that's stopping me now is the opportunity. George Foreman is ready. All I need to do is drink my milk and run down the street and I'm ready.
Wait till I come back. Watch this. I'm going to destroy Mike Tyson. I tried to retire, tried to be cool, but I had to come back. I have to come back. I'm going to show the world that I'm the miracle man. And the miracle don't have to have it. I'm so big, I got so many followers in the world. If America wasn't on the map, I still got millions of followers and fans and brothers. So I'm going to take you back to Africa, to our homeland, Kong. And Kong, there we'll have the showdown. So I'll see you soon. If we can't get it right here, we can go on the moon. Are we shooting now, or are we just talking?
We're just talking.
Are we shooting?
We may be shooting.
Hey, man.
If we were shooting.
No. I must know up front.
You get nervous about...
I don't get nervous. I want to know up front, Leroy.
He beat me one, he beat me that time.
He beat you a second in the third.
He didn't beat you. He beat me that time.
He didn't beat you the second time? Yeah. Whether he like it or not, the judges say
hey, I don't know
the second.
We ain't take no more.
We had three fights.
I'm getting sick and tired.
Let's get it.
We had 3 fights, you know. He won 2 and won 1. I won 1.
1.
I'm ready to get over there.
Don't get it. Don't get it. I got it. Hold Joe back. Hold Joe. Whoa.
Hey, when you roll with me, you roll big time. I got a fleet of limousine department building. I got 47 shipyards. Oh, yeah, I love myself. Get what? Better sit down. Get your check.
It's a good Democrat and Republican idea. We're going to get it sooner or later.
Mayor Flynn, what is missing in the Secretary of HUD's plan? What's missing?
Well, I think the Secretary is a refreshing sign in terms of what he wants to see happen. I just don't believe, however, that what he wants to see happen in terms of giving people self-help opportunities in those areas, in the areas of job training, education, child care, uplifting people out of their present status is really being supported by the rest of the federal government. I think there